Silence in a room full of 20 wealthy 7-year-olds was rarely a sign of peace. Usually, it meant mischief was being plotted with the precision of a corporate takeover. But today, the silence in room 3B at Oak Ridge Academy was born of exhaustion. The heavy, slate-gray sky pressing against the tall windows seemed to sap the energy from the children, leaving them listless over their grammar workbooks. Vanessa Turner stood at the front of the room, her hand gripping the edge of her mahogany desk, until her knuckles turned the color of old parchment. She wasn't looking at the students. She was staring at the sleek black smartphone face down on her planner, willing it not to vibrate again. It had been quiet for 12 minutes. That was the longest interval since sunrise. She smoothed the fabric of her skirt, a nervous tic she had developed over the last 6 months. To the parents who paid $50,000 a year in tuition, Vanessa was the picture of composed dedication. A 29-year-old widow with impeccable credentials, a soft voice, and a resilience that made her an excellent educator. They saw the honey blonde hair pinned back in a chignon and the polite smile. They didn't see the woman who checked the locks on her apartment door 5 times before sleeping. They didn't see the bank alerts for the legal fees she could no longer afford. The phone buzzed against the wood. A short, angry sound. Vanessa didn't flinch visibly, but inside, her stomach twisted into a cold knot. She knew exactly what the message would say. Ryan Foster didn't need to be creative to be terrifying. He just needed to be consistent. He was a detective with the NYPD, a man who wore his badge not as a shield for the public, but as a weapon for his private wars. She slid the phone into her pocket without checking the screen. Reading it now would break her. She had to get through the afternoon. She had to get through the art exchange with the kindergarten class. She had to pick up Lily, one step at a time. If she looked too far ahead, the panic would swallow her whole. In the back row, closest to the radiator that clanked rhythmically, Leo Giardoni watched his teacher. He was 7 years old, but his eyes were ancient. Dark, observant, and unsettlingly intelligent, Leo didn't fit in with the other children. While they bragged about their ski trips to Aspen, or their new game consoles, Leo observed. He measured the world in silences and shadows. He liked Ms. Turner. She didn't talk down to him in that high-pitched voice adults used when they thought children were stupid. She smelled like vanilla and old books, a scent that reminded him of a memory he couldn't quite place. Perhaps from before his mother had packed a bag and vanished into the night, leaving him in the cavernous silence of his uncle's penthouse. Leo saw the way Ms. Turner's hand trembled when she reached for her water bottle. He saw the dark circles she tried to hide with concealer. He recognized the look in her eyes because he saw it in the mirror every morning. It was the look of someone waiting for the floor to drop out beneath them. "All right, everyone," Vanessa said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Close your workbooks. It's time to head to the studio for the holiday project. Remember, we are setting an example for the kindergartners." Gentle hands, inside voices. The class erupted into the chaotic noise of chairs scraping and zippers zipping. The energy shifted from lethargy to excitement. They were making holiday cards today. Glitter and glue were high currency. Leo moved slowly. He packed his notebook, his movements precise. He hated the chaos. He hated the noise. He wanted to go home to the quiet order of his uncle's library, but he slung his expensive leather backpack over one shoulder and joined the line. The art studio was a large, airy space down the hall, smelling of tempera paint and wet wool from the coats drying near the entrance. The kindergarten class was already there, a swarm of smaller bodies and higher-pitched voices. Vanessa moved through the room like a ghost, helping open glue sticks and mediating disputes over red markers. She scanned the room constantly, her blue eyes darting to the door every time someone walked past. She was looking for Lily. Her daughter was sitting at a low table near the window, her blonde pigtails bobbing as she aggressively colored a snowman. Lily Turner was the only bright spot in Vanessa's collapsing world. She was 6, innocent, and completely unaware that her mother was currently being blackmailed with a fabricated dossier linking her to a drug ring she had never heard of. "Mommy," Lily chirped, spotting Vanessa. "Hi, Bug," Vanessa said, forcing a brightness into her tone that she didn't feel. She touched Lily's shoulder, grounding herself. "Are you making that for Grandma?" "No, for Santa." Lily whispered conspiratorially. But it's a secret. Okay, a secret. Vanessa kissed the top of her head. I have to help with the glitter station. You stay here, okay? As Vanessa moved away, the phone in her pocket buzzed again. Long, persistent. A call. She ignored it, but the vibration felt like a brand against her hip. Leo stood near the coat racks, watching the scene. He had finished his card early, a geometrically perfect Christmas tree with no people around it. He was bored. He watched Lily Turner working on her drawing. She was intense, pressing the crayons down hard. He liked her. She didn't ask him why he didn't have a mom. She just shared her goldfish crackers. The bell rang, signaling the transition to dismissal. The controlled chaos turned into a stampede. Teachers began clapping their hands for attention, organizing lines for buses and pickup. Backpacks, everyone. Don't forget your gear. The art teacher shouted over the din. The pile of bags in the corner was a mountain of nylon and leather. Leo went to retrieve his. He was jostled by a boy named Tyler, who was rushing to get to the door. Leo stumbled, annoyed, and grabbed the strap of the bag nearest to him. It was pink. He frowned, dropping it. He reached for the black one next to it, but in the crush of 30 children grabbing their belongings, things were shifting. Another pink backpack, Lily's, was knocked over, sliding next to Leo's feet. Leo, recovering his balance, reached down. The lighting in the corner was dim, shadows stretching long as the winter sun set early. He grabbed a handle. It wasn't his bag. He realized it a second too late as he was swept up in the current of students heading for the door. He looked down. He was holding a pink backpack with a unicorn keychain. He stopped, trying to turn back. But the flow of traffic was one way. He looked around for the owner. He saw Lily Turner disappearing out the door with a black leather backpack. No, she had a pink one too. There were 3 girls with pink backpacks. Leo sighed, the weight of the error settling on his small shoulders. He would have to tell Uncle Nicholas. His uncle hated disorder. Mixing up property was disorder. He found a quiet corner in the waiting atrium, away from the noise. He sat on a bench, placing the pink bag on his lap. Curiosity, a trait his uncle encouraged, got the better of him. The front pocket was unzipped. A piece of paper was sticking out, precariously close to falling onto the muddy floor. Leo pulled it out to save it. It was the drawing Lily had been working on, but on the back, there was writing. Not schoolwork. A letter. Leo smoothed the crumpled paper. The handwriting was messy, filled with eraser marks, but legible. Dear Santa, I don't want toys. Please. My mommy is sad. She cries every night in the bathroom. She thinks I am sleeping, but I hear her. She is scared of the bad man who calls on the phone. The man said he will take me away to a foster home if she talks. Mommy says everything is okay, but her hands shake. Please help her. She is the best mommy. Make the bad man stop. I promise I will eat all my vegetables. Lily. Leo stared at the words. The sounds of the atrium, parents greeting children, the squeak of wet boots, faded into a dull roar. He felt a coldness spread through his chest, a resonance that had nothing to do with the drafty doors. She cries every night. The bad man. Leo knew about bad men. His uncle dealt with them. His uncle made them go away. But this was different. This was Ms. Turner. She was the one who gave him extra time on tests when his anxiety spiked. She was the one who never looked at him with pity, only kindness. And she was scared. He looked across the atrium. He couldn't see Ms. Turner or Lily. They must have gone to the aftercare room. He folded the letter carefully, treating it with the reverence of a holy relic, and slid it into his pocket. He wouldn't give it back. Not yet. This wasn't something a kid could fix. This was a job for the person who fixed everything. A shadow fell over him. Leo looked up. Standing there, cutting through the crowd of Upper East Side parents in puffy coats and designer scarves, was a figure that seemed carved from a different reality. Nicholas Giardoni did not blend in. He was tall, over 6'3", with broad shoulders encased in a bespoke Italian suit that cost more than the tuition of the school. He didn't wear a coat, despite the freezing rain. The cold didn't seem to touch him. His hair was dark, swept back, and his eyes were a shade of amber that could be warm whiskey or burning fire depending on his mood. Today, they were neutral, scanning the perimeter like a radar. "Leo," Nicholas said. His voice was deep, a baritone that commanded attention without needing volume. "Uncle Nick," Leo said, standing up. He clutched the pink backpack. Nicholas looked at the bag. One eyebrow rose, a millimeter of expression that spoke volumes. "New style?" "Mistake," Leo muttered. "It belongs to Lily, Ms. Turner's daughter." "Ms. Turner," Nicholas repeated. The name was becoming familiar. "The literature teacher. We have a meeting with her. Regarding your lack of participation in group activities." "I participate," Leo argued weakly. "I listen." "Listening is not engaging, Leo. Come, let's get this over with." Nicholas placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. It was a heavy, grounding weight. They moved through the crowd, parting the sea of parents. People moved out of Nicholas's way instinctively. They sensed the predator in their midst, the dangerous edge that money couldn't buy and social standing couldn't mask. They walked down the hallway toward room 3B. The school was quieting down now. The janitorial staff was beginning their rounds. As they approached the open door of the classroom, Nicholas slowed his pace. His instincts, honed by 15 years of surviving power struggles and assassination attempts, were always active. He heard a sound. Not a voice speaking, but a voice breaking. He held up a hand, signaling Leo to stop. They stood in the blind spot of the doorframe. Inside, Vanessa was alone. The students were gone. She was standing by the blackboard, wiping away the day's lessons. Her back was to the door, but her posture screamed defeat. Her shoulders were slumped, her head bowed. Her phone rang. She froze. Nicholas watched her reflection in the dark window pane. She stared at the device on her desk as if it were a bomb. She didn't want to answer it. He could see the terror radiating off her, a palpable aura of distress. She picked it up. Her hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped it. "Ryan, please," she answered. Her voice was thin, brittle. "I'm at work." Nicholas didn't move. He wasn't eavesdropping for pleasure. He was gathering intelligence. "Ryan, a first name, personal." "No," Vanessa whispered, and the sound was like tearing silk. "You can't do that. The dossier is fake. You know it's fake." She listened to the response, and Nicholas saw her face crumble. It wasn't just sadness, it was devastation. She dropped the eraser she was holding. It hit the floor with a puff of white chalk dust. She didn't notice. She gripped the edge of the slate board, her nails scraping against the tray. "I'll get the money," she sobbed, her voice barely audible. "Just don't come to the apartment tonight. Lily she's having nightmares. Please, just give me one more day." The person on the other end hung up. Vanessa stood there, the silence of the room rushing back in to suffocate her. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the phone. She just leaned her forehead against the cool blackboard and let out a single, ragged breath that sounded like a soul breaking. Nicholas Giardoni stood in the hall, his face an impassive mask. But beneath the tailored suit, his muscles coiled. He looked down at Leo, who was clutching the pink backpack and the letter in his pocket, looking up at his uncle with wide, pleading eyes. Leo didn't need to say it. Nicholas had heard enough. Fake dossier. Money. Nightmares. This wasn't a teacher meeting anymore. This was a situation. And Nicholas Giardoni did not like situations that involved terrified women and weeping children. It offended his sense of order. He adjusted his cuffs, his eyes darkening to the color of burnt sugar. He looked at the woman inside the room, so fragile she looked like she might shatter if the wind changed direction. He decided, in that split second, that he would be the one to pick up the pieces. He stepped into the doorway, his dress shoes making a sharp, deliberate click against the linoleum. "Ms. Turner," Nicholas said. Vanessa spun around, gasping, her hand flying to her chest. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes, seeing a large, imposing man blocking her exit. For a second she thought it was him, the bad man. But then her eyes adjusted. Mr. Giardoni," she stammered, frantically wiping her eyes, trying to reassemble the mask of the professional teacher. I didn't hear you come in. Is it 4:30 already? It is, Nicholas said. He didn't smile. He walked into the room, taking up all the available space, his presence pressing against the walls. He stopped in front of her desk, looking down at the dropped eraser, then back up to her tear-stained face. He saw the fear. It was raw and ugly, and he saw the spark of defiance buried deep beneath it, the only thing keeping her standing. "We need to talk," Nicholas said, his voice calm, cool, and utterly absolute. "About Leo. And about the backpack my nephew seems to have acquired." Vanessa looked at Leo, then at the pink bag, confusion warring with her panic. She nodded, swallowing hard. "Of course." "Please, sit down." But Nicholas didn't sit. He stood guard, his back to the door, watching her. He had seen the enemy without ever meeting him. And he knew, with the certainty of a man who controlled empires, that the balance of power in Vanessa Turner's life was about to shift violently in her favor. The dossier landed on the glass surface of the desk with a heavy, authoritative thud that echoed through the silence of the penthouse office. It was 2 a.m, 48 hours after Nicholas Giardoni had walked out of Oak Ridge Academy with a child's plea for help burning a hole in his pocket. The city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was a sprawling grid of electric bioluminescence, alive and indifferent. But inside, the atmosphere was stagnant, heavy with the scent of espresso and the ozone smell of laser-printed secrets. Nicholas sat in his leather chair, the high back supporting a frame that was currently rigid with suppressed violence. He didn't open the folder immediately. He took a sip of the black coffee, his eyes fixed on the man standing on the other side of the desk. "Tell me," Nicholas commanded, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the quiet room. Silvio, his head of intelligence, adjusted his glasses. He was a small, unassuming man who could find the skeleton in a saint's closet within an hour. "It is worse than we thought, boss. The woman is drowning." Nicholas finally reached out, his manicured fingers flipping open the cover of the beige file. The first photograph was a candid shot of Vanessa Turner walking into the school. She looked exhausted, her posture defensive, clutching her purse as if it contained state secrets. "Vanessa Turner, 29, Silvio recited from memory. Widowed 3 years ago. Her husband, Mark Turner, died in a multi-car pileup on the I-95. No life insurance. The policy had lapsed 2 months prior due to a missed payment. He left her with significant debt, mostly medical bills from a previous condition he hadn't disclosed." Nicholas scanned the financial records. They were a testament to a desperate, grinding struggle. Every paycheck from the academy was immediately siphoned off to creditors, rent, and utility companies. There were gaps where she clearly hadn't eaten so her daughter could have new shoes. It was the arithmetic of survival, and the numbers didn't add up. "And the cop?" Nicholas asked, turning the page. "Detective Ryan Foster." Silvio spat the name with professional disdain. 32. Decorated on paper, but his internal affairs file has been flagged and buried 3 times in the last 5 years. Excessive force, intimidation, evidence tampering. He meets his quotas, so the precinct looks the other way. Nicholas stared at the photo of Ryan Foster. He had the kind of face that trusted authority too much, handsome in a generic, predatory way, with eyes that looked flat and dead. He and Vanessa dated for 4 months. Silvio continued. She broke it off 6 months ago. Foster didn't take it well. He's been systematically dismantling her life since. He uses police resources to run plates on anyone she speaks to. He's had her car towed 3 times for parking violations that didn't exist. And the threats? He's smart about them. Encrypted apps, burner phones, verbal warnings in dead zones where cameras don't reach. The 'Ndrangheta connection? Confirmed. Silvio nodded gravely. Foster has a gambling problem. He owes 40 grand to a bookie in Queens who kicks up to the Calabrese family. They own him. He runs interference for their street-level pushers in exchange for debt forgiveness. He's desperate, boss. And desperate men are volatile. Nicholas closed the file. The anger he felt wasn't the hot, impulsive rage of his youth. It was cold, structural, and absolute. This man, this badge-wearing thug, was terrorizing a woman who spent her days teaching children how to read poetry. He was using the machinery of the law to crush a mother who was already on her knees. And he had made Lily cry. Nicholas stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. The movement was sharp. "He's escalating." "Yes," Silvio agreed. "We intercepted a text sent to her burner an hour ago. He's losing patience. He's threatening to plant narcotics in her apartment and call CPS. He wants her back, or he wants her destroyed." "Friday," Nicholas said, looking at the calendar on his desk. "Leo has an early dismissal today for the faculty development afternoon. The school will be empty by 3. What are your orders?" Nicholas walked to the window. Looking down at the city he ruled from the shadows. He saw the lights of police cruisers weaving through traffic, symbols of an order that had failed Vanessa Turner. "Prepare the legal team," Nicholas said, his reflection in the glass looking like a specter of judgment. "I want the debt bought. All of it. The hospital bills, the credit cards, the student loans. Buy it quietly through the shell company in the Caymans. By Monday, I want to be the only person she owes anything to. And Foster?" Nicholas turned back, his amber eyes hard as diamonds. "I'll handle Foster myself. He likes to use fear. Let's see how he handles it when it's directed at him." The corridors of Oak Ridge Academy on a Friday afternoon usually vibrated with the frenetic energy of freedom. Teachers and students alike were desperate to escape the ecosystem of learning for the weekend. But today, the atmosphere in the West Wing was heavy, thick with a tension that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Vanessa Turner sat at her desk, staring at the gradebook she hadn't updated in 20 minutes. The school was quiet. Lily was already in the faculty child-minding room down the hall, watching a movie with the other staff kids. Vanessa needed to leave. She needed to grab Lily, get in her unreliable Honda Civic, and drive until the city was a speck in the rearview mirror. But she couldn't move. Ryan was outside. She knew it. She could feel him. He wasn't in the parking lot this time. He was inside. He had used his badge to bypass security, claiming he needed to speak to her about a police matter. The security guard, a retired cop himself, had let him through with a nod of camaraderie. Vanessa's hands were shaking as she shoved papers into her tote bag. "Get out. Just get out. Take the back exit." She stood up, swinging the bag over her shoulder. She moved toward the door of her classroom, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She reached for the handle, took a breath to steady herself, and pulled the door open. Ryan Foster was leaning against the lockers on the opposite wall, waiting for her. He smiled. It was a terrifying expression, devoid of warmth, stripping her naked with a single glance. He was wearing his leather jacket and jeans, his badge clipped visibly to his belt, a reminder of his power. "Going somewhere, Ness?" he asked, pushing off the wall and taking a step toward her. Vanessa stepped back, retreating into the classroom. It was a mistake. It gave him permission to follow. Ryan walked in, kicking the door shut behind him with his heel. The latch clicked, a sound that echoed like a gunshot in the empty room. "Leave me alone, Ryan," Vanessa said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound strong. "I have to pick up Lily. Lily can wait," he said, his voice smooth, casual, as if they were discussing the weather. "We need to talk about us. You've been ignoring my texts." "That's rude, Vanessa. I don't like rude. There is no us," she pleaded, backing up until her hips hit the edge of her desk. She was trapped. "Please, just go. If you leave now, I won't report you." Ryan laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "Report me? To who? My sergeant? He's the godfather of my sister's kid. The precinct is a brotherhood, Ness. You're just a hysterical ex-girlfriend with a history of instability. Who are they going to believe? The decorated detective or the struggling widow who can't even pay her electric bill?" He closed the distance between them. He smelled of stale coffee and aggressive cologne. He loomed over her, using his height to intimidate, placing his hands on the desk on either side of her hips, caging her in. "You look tired," he murmured, leaning in close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath on her cheek. "You look like you need someone to take care of you. Why are you fighting this? You know you can't survive on your own. I can make the debt go away. I can make the investigations stop. All you have to do is be a good girl." Vanessa turned her face away, revulsion rising in her throat. "Get away from me. Look at me when I'm talking to you," Ryan roared, his facade of calm shattering instantly. He grabbed her chin, his fingers digging into her skin, forcing her to look at him. "You think you're better than me? You think because you teach at this fancy school you're too good for a cop? You're nothing without me. Nothing." Tears pricked Vanessa's eyes, hot and humiliating. She was paralyzed by the violence in his gaze. He was going to hit her. She knew the signs. The dilated pupils, the vein throbbing in his neck. "Please," she whispered. "Please what?" Ryan sneered. "Beg. Maybe if you beg nicely, I won't file that report with CPS today. I have the paperwork right here in my car. Unfit mother due to financial instability and erratic behavior. They'll take Lily straight to a group home in the Bronx." The threat hung in the air, monstrous and suffocating. "Excuse me." The voice came from the doorway. It was not loud. It was not shouted. It was conversational, polite, and colder than the bottom of the ocean. Ryan froze. His hand was still gripping Vanessa's chin. He turned his head slowly, annoyed at the interruption. Nicholas Giardoni stood in the doorway. He had reopened the door without making a sound. He was wearing a navy three-piece suit that fit him like a second skin. His posture relaxed, his hands in his pockets. But the air around him crackled with a dark, lethal electricity. "Who the hell are you?" Ryan snapped, dropping his hand from Vanessa's face and turning to face the intruder. "This is a private conversation. Get out." Nicholas didn't move. He didn't blink. He just looked at Ryan, his gaze traveling from the detective's scuffed boots to the cheap leather jacket, and finally resting on the badge. He analyzed him, dismantled him, and discarded him in the span of 3 seconds. "I believe," Nicholas said, stepping into the room, "that the lady asked you to leave. Twice." Ryan puffed out his chest, falling back on his authority. "I'm a police officer, Detective Ryan Foster. I'm conducting an investigation. Now back off, pal, before I arrest you for obstruction." Nicholas smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf watching a rabbit try to explain why it shouldn't be eaten. "An investigation," Nicholas repeated, savoring the word. He walked further into the room, placing himself deliberately between Ryan and Vanessa. He didn't look at her yet, but his presence formed a wall of granite shielding her. Is that what they call assaulting a woman in a classroom these days? The NYPD standards must have lowered significantly. "Listen to me," Ryan started, reaching for his handcuffs, an instinctual move to dominate. "No," Nicholas interrupted. The word was soft, but it hit like a physical blow. "You listen, detective. You are currently trespassing on private property. You are harassing a member of the faculty, and you are boring me." Ryan's face turned red. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. People feared the badge. "You want to go downtown? Is that it? I can ruin your day in 5 minutes." Nicholas finally took his hands out of his pockets. He checked his watch, a platinum Patek Philippe that cost more than Ryan made in 5 years. "You have 30 seconds to leave this building. If you are still here at 31 seconds, I will call the commissioner. We play golf on Tuesdays. I'm sure he'd be fascinated to hear about your connections to the 'Ndrangheta and your gambling debts in Queens." The color drained from Ryan's face instantly. His mouth opened, then closed. The air left his lungs. How do you know about that?" Nicholas took a step forward. Ryan took a step back. "I know everything," Nicholas said, his voice dropping to a whisper that only the 3 of them could hear. "I know about the 40 grand. I know about the dossier you faked. I know about the threats. You are a small, corrupt man playing a game you do not understand, and you have drawn the attention of a player who does not lose." Ryan looked at Nicholas, really looked at him, and for the first time, he saw past the suit. He saw the predator. He recognized the look in Nicholas's eyes. It was the look of a man who had buried bodies and slept soundly afterward. Ryan swallowed hard. He looked at Vanessa, who was pressing herself against the blackboard, clutching her throat. He wanted to say something, to reclaim some shred of dignity, but his survival instinct screamed at him to run. "This isn't over," Ryan muttered, pointing a shaking finger at Vanessa. You think this guy can save you? He's just another tough guy.
Time is up, Nicholas said. Ryan flinched. He turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps heavy and fast, fleeing the scene. Silence rushed back into the classroom. But it was different now. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of a vacuum after an explosion. Vanessa stood frozen, her chest heaving, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She looked at the man standing in the center of her classroom. He was terrifying. He had dismantled Ryan with a few sentences. He knew things, dark things. Nicholas turned to her. The coldness vanished from his face, replaced by a grave, intense concern. He didn't move toward her immediately, respecting her space. Are you hurt? He asked. Vanessa shook her head, unable to speak. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold her shattering composure together. Who are you? How do you know all that? I told you, Nicholas said gently. I'm Leo's uncle. You're Mafia, she whispered. The word hung in the air. It was the only explanation. The suit, the power, the knowledge of the Ndrangheta. Nicholas didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it. He simply reached into his jacket pocket. I am a man who solves problems, he said. And it seems you have a problem that requires a specific set of skills. He pulled out a piece of paper. It was folded, wrinkled, and covered in pencil marks. Vanessa recognized the paper stock. It was from the school art supply. Leo found this in the pink backpack, Nicholas said, extending the paper toward her. Vanessa stepped forward tentatively. She took the paper. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. She read the wobbly block letters. Dear Santa, my mommy cries every night. Please make the bad man go away. A sob ripped through her throat. It was a guttural, raw sound of heartbreak. She covered her mouth with her hand, reading the words again. Her daughter, her baby. Lily knew. Lily had been listening to her weep in the shower. Lily was living in terror, writing letters to imaginary figures because her mother couldn't protect her. She gave it to Leo by mistake, Nicholas said softly. Leo gave it to me. He asked me to help. Vanessa looked up at him, her vision blurred by tears. Why? Why would you help us? You don't know me. Nicholas took a step closer. He was close enough now that she could smell him. Expensive sandalwood, crisp linen, and something uniquely masculine. He didn't touch her, but his presence was encompassing. Because no child should have to write a letter like that, Nicholas said, his voice rough with emotion. And no woman should have to face a man like that alone. He gestured to the door where Ryan had fled. I investigated you, Vanessa, he admitted. I know about the debt. I know about your husband. I know you are drowning. I can stop it. All of it. I can make Ryan Foster disappear from your life permanently. I can clear the debt. I can give you security that the NYPD can't even dream of. Vanessa stared at him. It was a deal with the devil. She knew it. He was dangerous. He was part of a world she only read about in crime novels. But looking at him, seeing the fierce intensity in his amber eyes, she didn't feel fear. She felt seen. What do you want in return? She asked, her voice a whisper. Men like you. You don't do favors for free. Nicholas looked at her. He looked at the smudge of chalk on her cheek, the fraying cuff of her sleeve, the desperation in her beautiful face. I want you to be safe, he said simply. That is all. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a sleek black phone. He placed it on her desk next to the unicorn drawing. This phone is encrypted. Only I have the number. If he comes back, if he even breathes in your direction, you press the contact labeled Nick. Do you understand? Vanessa looked at the phone, then at the letter in her hand. Lily's plea to Santa. Santa hadn't come. But a man in a bespoke suit with the eyes of a wolf had. He'll come back, Vanessa whispered, looking at the door. He always comes back. Let him, Nicholas said, his jaw tightening. Next time he won't find a victim. He'll find me. He nodded to her, a gesture of old-world respect, and turned to leave. Vanessa watched him go. She touched the black phone. The metal was cool against her skin,
For the first time in 6 months, the knot of terror in her stomach loosened just a fraction. She wasn't alone anymore. The monster chasing her had just been introduced to a bigger monster, and this one seemed to be on her side. The heavy black cardstock lay on the scratched surface of the teacher's desk, absorbing the fluorescent light overhead. It looked less like a business card, and more like a piece of dark matter that had fallen out of the universe to land between a stack of ungraded spelling quizzes and a jar of pencils. Gold-embossed letters spelled out a name and a number. Nothing else. No title, no company logo, no address. Just Nicholas Giardoni, and a sequence of digits that likely led to a phone that was untraceable by the NYPD. Vanessa stared at it, her chest heaving with the aftershocks of adrenaline. The classroom was empty now, Ryan's aggressive cologne finally dissipating, replaced by the lingering scent of sandalwood and danger that Nicholas had left behind. "I can't do this," she whispered to the empty room. Her voice sounded thin, scraping against the silence. She picked up the card, intending to tear it in half. Accepting help from a man like Nicholas Giardoni wasn't a lifeline. It was a transfer of ownership. She had watched enough news, heard enough whispers in the faculty lounge about who really owned the construction contracts for the new gymnasium. You didn't invite the devil into your living room just because he offered to turn up the heat. But her fingers wouldn't rip the paper. Instead, she traced the raised gold lettering. "I want you to be safe, that is all." His words replayed in her mind, a smooth baritone that felt unnervingly solid compared to Ryan's erratic shouting. Ryan was a storm, violent, unpredictable, noisy. Nicholas was a mountain, immovable, silent, casting a shadow that could either shelter or freeze you to death. "He wants something," she reasoned, her mind racing through the cynical arithmetic of survival she had learned over the last 3 years. Men like that always want something. She shoved the card deep into her purse, hidden inside the zippered pocket where she kept her emergency cash. She wouldn't use it. She couldn't. But she wouldn't throw it away either. It was a weapon. And when you were walking through a war zone, you didn't discard ammunition, even if you didn't know how to use the gun. The drive to pick up Lily was a blur of paranoia. Vanessa checked the rearview mirror every 3 seconds. Every black sedan was an unmarked police car. Every shadow stretching across the wet pavement was a figure waiting to strike. Her Honda Civic rattled as she navigated the potholes of Queens, the heater blowing lukewarm air that smelled of dust and old plastic. When she reached the aftercare facility, Lily was sitting by the window, her nose pressed against the glass, fogging it up. The sight of her daughter, alive, safe, wearing a mismatched outfit, because she had insisted on dressing herself that morning, broke the dam holding back Vanessa's tears. She swallowed them down. She couldn't be weak. Not now. "Mommy." Lily launched herself into Vanessa's arms the moment the door opened. "Gotcha," Vanessa said, lifting her up. The weight of the 6-year-old was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. "Ready to go home? We can make pancakes for dinner." "Breakfast for dinner," Lily cheered, oblivious to the fact that pancakes were on the menu because they were cheap and filling, and the grocery budget for the week was down to $12. The apartment building was a pre-war structure that had survived decades of neglect. The lobby smelled of bleach and boiled cabbage. Vanessa carried Lily up the 3 flights of stairs, her muscles burning. She didn't put her daughter down until they were inside Unit 3B. The ritual began immediately. It was a routine Vanessa performed with religious fervor. Deadbolt clicked. Chain slid into place. A sturdy wooden chair wedged under the knob. She checked the window locks, even though they were on the 3rd floor, and the fire escape didn't reach their bedroom. "Mommy, why do you always put the chair there?" Lily asked, kicking off her sneakers. "Are we playing fort?" "Yes, baby," Vanessa lied, her voice steady. "It's for the fort. We have to keep the dragons out." They ate pancakes in the small kitchen, the only light coming from the stove hood to save electricity. Outside, the wind howled through the alleyway, rattling the loose window frames. Every rattle made Vanessa jump. She watched Lily eat, watching the way syrup stuck to her chin, thinking about the pink backpack and the letter. "My mommy cries every night." Guilt, sharp and toxic, flooded her system. She thought she had been hiding it well. She thought the shower masked the sobbing. But children were radar dishes for emotion. They picked up on every frequency their parents tried to jam. "I love you, Lil," Vanessa said, reaching across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "I know," Lily said through a mouthful of fluff. "I love you too, and Santa is going to help us." Vanessa froze. "Santa? I sent him a letter," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Leo said his uncle knows Santa, so it's going to be okay." Vanessa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty window. Leo, the quiet boy with the sad eyes. Nicholas hadn't just intercepted a letter. He had been invited into their lives by the innocence of 2 children. By 9 o'clock, Lily was asleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Vanessa sat in the living room, the encrypted black phone Nicholas had given her sitting on the coffee table like a monolith. She stared at it. It seemed to pulse with a silent invitation. Press the button. End the fear. "No," she said aloud. "I can handle this. I'll get a restraining order tomorrow. I'll go to the precinct in a different district. I'll find a lawyer who works pro bono." She fell asleep on the couch, fully dressed, a kitchen knife tucked under the cushion. It was a pathetic defense against a man with a badge and a gun, but it was all she had. The sound that woke her wasn't loud. It wasn't a crash or a bang. It was the soft, distinctive click of metal against metal. Vanessa's eyes snapped open. The apartment was pitch black. The digital clock on the microwave read 2:14 a.m. She held her breath, listening. The silence of the apartment felt heavy, pressurized. Had she imagined it? Then she heard it again, a floorboard creaking in the hallway. The one near the bathroom that always groaned when you stepped on the left side. She wasn't alone. Panic, cold and electrifying, surged through her veins. She reached under the cushion for the knife, her fingers closing around the handle. She didn't move. She couldn't scream. If she screamed, Lily might wake up and come out of the bedroom. She had to draw him away from Lily. "Ryan?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Silence. Then, a low chuckle drifted from the direction of the bathroom. "You should fix that lock, Ness." A credit card and a little shoulder was all it took. The chair was a cute touch, though. He was inside. The realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. He had breached the sanctuary. Vanessa stood up, brandishing the knife, her heart hammering so hard it felt like it was bruising her ribs. "Get out. I have a knife. I'll scream." "Scream and you wake the kid," Ryan's voice replied. He wasn't shouting. He sounded calm, amused. "You don't want Lily to see her mommy bleeding, do you?" The threat paralyzed her. She stood in the center of the living room, shaking. She heard footsteps moving away from her, towards the front door. "I left you a present," Ryan said from the entryway. "Check the bathroom mirror. Just a reminder that I can come and go whenever I want." "You're never safe, Vanessa. Not unless I say you are." The front door opened and closed. The latch clicked. He was gone. Vanessa stood frozen for a full minute, waiting for the trick, waiting for him to burst back in. When the silence stretched on, she rushed to the door, slamming the deadbolt home, fumbling with the chain, her hands shaking so violently she could barely coordinate her fingers. She shoved the chair back under the knob, then dragged the small sofa across the room to barricade it further. Only then did she run to the bathroom. She flipped the light switch. The harsh yellow bulb illuminated the small tiled space. On the mirror above the sink, written in thick, greasy red letters, was a message. It wasn't written in marker. It was written in lipstick. A bright, cherry red shade. Vanessa looked down at the counter. Lily's play makeup kit was open. Her favorite princess lipstick had been smashed, the tip broken off, and used to scrawl the threat. Tick-tock, teacher. 24 hours. He had touched Lily's things. He had been in here, in the dark, while they slept. He had touched her daughter's toys with his hands. Vanessa dry-heaved, clutching the edge of the sink. The violation was absolute. The restraining order wouldn't work. The different precinct wouldn't work. Ryan was right. He was the law. Or at least he hid behind it well enough to destroy her before anyone noticed. She walked back into the living room. She looked at the kitchen knife in her hand. It looked like a toy. It was useless against the monster circling her house. Her eyes fell on the coffee table, the black phone. She didn't hesitate this time. She didn't think about the morality of the Mafia, or the debt she would incur, or the pride she was swallowing. She thought about cherry red lipstick on a bathroom mirror, and the fact that a man had stood outside her daughter's bedroom door while she slept. She picked up the phone. There was only one contact saved. Nick. She pressed the call button. It rang once. "Talk to me," Nicholas's voice answered. He sounded wide awake, alert, as if he had been sitting by the phone waiting for this exact moment. He was here. Vanessa whispered, her voice breaking into a sob she couldn't suppress anymore. He broke in. He wrote on the mirror with Lily's lipstick. He said, "I have 24 hours. Are you hurt?" The question was sharp, immediate. "No." He left. But he was inside. He touched her things, Nicholas. He touched her things. "Is the door secured?" "Yes. I put the couch in front of it." "Good. Keep it there." There was a rustling sound on the other end, the sound of movement, of fabric shifting. "Do not open that door for anyone but me. I'm coming." "It's 2 a.m., she said senselessly. "You can't." "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Nicholas interrupted. His voice was no longer just calm. It was lethal. It was the voice of a man issuing a death sentence. "Pack a bag. Essentials only. You're not staying there another night." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere he can't reach you. 15 minutes, Vanessa. Stay away from the windows." The line went dead. Vanessa dropped the phone onto the couch and sprinted to the bedroom. She grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. Hands shaking, she threw in clothes for Lily. Pajamas, school uniform, underwear, socks. She grabbed her own toiletries, a pair of jeans, a sweater. She grabbed Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops, ensuring it was safe. She moved with the frantic energy of a refugee fleeing a war zone, which, in a way, she was. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching the digital clock. 2:20, 2:25, 2:29. At exactly 2:30, a heavy knock sounded on the door. 3 distinct raps. "Vanessa, it's Nicholas." She ran to the living room. She dragged the sofa back, her adrenaline giving her strength she didn't know she possessed. She undid the locks, the chain, the deadbolt. She threw the door open. The hallway, usually dim and smelling of mildew, was filled with men. There were 4 of them, dressed in black tactical gear that looked expensive and terrifyingly efficient. They were scanning the stairwell, the elevator, the street below. In the center of them stood Nicholas. He wasn't wearing the suit from the afternoon. He was wearing dark jeans, a black cashmere sweater, and a heavy wool coat. He looked bigger like this, broader. He looked like a warlord who had descended from his fortress. He stepped inside immediately, filling the tiny apartment with his presence. He didn't look at her at first. His eyes swept the room, checking corners, checking shadows. "Clear the perimeter," he ordered the men in the hallway. 2 of them moved toward the stairs. 1 remained at the door facing out. Nicholas turned to Vanessa. He reached out, his hands hovering near her arms but not touching, checking her for invisible wounds. "Did he touch you?" "No." She shook her head, tears streaming freely now. He wanted me to know he could." Nicholas's jaw tightened until a muscle feathered in his cheek. He looked toward the bathroom. The mirror. Yes. He walked over, looked inside, and stared at the red message for a long moment. When he turned back, his face was a mask of cold fury. "Silvio," he called out to the man at the door. "Document that, then clean it off. I don't want the girl to see it." "Yes, boss." Nicholas walked back to Vanessa. "Where is she?" "Sleeping. In the bedroom. Get her. We leave now." Vanessa nodded and turned to the bedroom. But she didn't need to go far. Lily was standing in the doorway, clutching Mr. Hops, rubbing her eyes with her free hand. She looked tiny in her oversized pajama shirt. "Mommy?" she mumbled, blinking against the light. "Is the bad man back?" Vanessa rushed to her, falling to her knees to hug her. "No, baby. No. It's okay." Lily looked over Vanessa's shoulder. She saw the large men in the hallway. She saw the man in the black coat standing in their living room. Her eyes went wide. She pulled back from Vanessa and stared at Nicholas. Nicholas didn't loom over her. He didn't stay standing. Slowly, with a grace that belied his size. He lowered himself onto one knee, the expensive denim of his jeans pressed against the dirty linoleum floor. He brought himself down to her eye level. "Hello, Lily," he said. His voice was unrecognizable from the one that had ordered the perimeter cleared. It was soft, gentle, almost reverence. Lily took a step forward, ignoring her mother's protective grasp. She stared at Nicholas, at his dark hair, his intense eyes, the aura of absolute command he radiated. "Are you him?" she whispered. Nicholas tilted his head slightly. "Who?" "Santa," Lily breathed. "Leo said his uncle knows Santa. Did you get my letter?" Vanessa held her breath. She waited for him to correct her, to laugh, to explain. Nicholas didn't smile. He looked at the child with solemn seriousness. He understood the gravity of belief. He understood that she wasn't asking about a man in a red suit. She was asking about salvation. "I got your letter," Nicholas said, "and I came as fast as I could." Lily's lower lip trembled. "Is the bad man gone?" Nicholas reached out, offering his hand. It was large, scarred, capable of terrible violence, but he held it open, palm up, a gesture of peace. "He's not going to bother you tonight, Lily, and I am going to make sure he never scares your mommy again. That is a promise." "Pinky promise?" she asked, extending her small finger. Nicholas hooked his large pinky around hers. "Blood oath," he murmured, then corrected himself. "The biggest promise there is." Vanessa watched them, her heart twisting in her chest. She saw the way Nicholas looked at her daughter. Not as a burden, not as baggage, but as something precious that required defending. She saw the way Lily looked at him, with instant, instinctive trust, and in that moment, the last of Vanessa's resistance crumbled. She looked at the peeling paint on the walls, the flimsy lock on the door, the knife on the couch. Then she looked at the man kneeling on her floor, pledging his protection to a 6-year-old. She wasn't just accepting help. She was choosing a side. "We have to go, Lily," Vanessa said, her voice steady for the first time that night. "Mr. Nicholas has a safe place for us to stay." "Like a castle?" Lily asked, looking at Nicholas. Nicholas stood up, lifting Lily effortlessly into his arms, as if she weighed nothing. He grabbed the duffel bag with his other hand. "Better than a castle," Nicholas said, walking toward the door. "It has heated floors and a chef who makes pancakes at 3 a.m. He paused at the threshold and looked back at Vanessa. "Coming?" Vanessa grabbed her purse. She took one last look at the apartment that had been her prison of fear for 6 months. She looked at the chair she had used to barricade the door, now uselessly pushed aside. "Yes," she said. She stepped out into the hallway, flanked by Nicholas's security team. As they walked toward the elevator, Nicholas shifted Lily so she could rest her head on his shoulder. The little girl was already falling back asleep, secure in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city. Vanessa walked beside him. She knew, with a terrifying clarity, that she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. She had invited the darkness in to fight the darkness. But as she looked at Nicholas's profile, grim, determined, and fiercely protective, she realized that for the first time in years, she wasn't walking alone. They stepped into the waiting elevator, the doors sliding shut on her old life, sealing her fate with a soft, metallic chime. The silence of the Upper East Side penthouse was a physical weight, heavy and unfamiliar. For 6 months, Vanessa Turner had lived in a soundscape of fear. The creak of floorboards in a pre-war walk-up, the rattle of single-paned windows in the wind, the phantom vibrations of a phone that signaled another threat. Here, 30 stories above the city, the world was muted by triple-paned glass and thick, plush carpeting that swallowed footsteps whole. Vanessa woke up before the alarm, her body jerking upright in the king-sized bed, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. It took her several seconds to calibrate her reality. She wasn't in Queens. The sheets against her skin were high thread-count Egyptian cotton, cool and crisp, not the pilled flannel she had owned for years. The light filtering through the sheer curtains was the soft, diffuse gray of a Manhattan morning, not the harsh glare of a street lamp buzzing outside her bedroom window. She swung her legs out of bed, her toes sinking into the cream-colored rug. The apartment Nicholas had moved them into was a masterpiece of neutral tones. Beiges, soft whites, and warm grays, designed to soothe a nervous system that had been firing on all cylinders for too long. It was a fortress disguised as a sanctuary. She moved to the second bedroom, her heart rate spiking until she pushed the door open. Lily was asleep, sprawled across a bed that looked like a cloud, clutching Mr. Hops. The room was safe. The windows were locked. The door was solid oak. Vanessa exhaled, a long, shaky breath that released a fraction of the tension coiled in her spine. "We're here," she whispered to herself, as if saying it aloud made it true. "We're safe." But safety came with conditions, and Vanessa was not a woman who accepted charity easily. She walked into the kitchen, a space gleaming with marble and stainless steel, to find a coffee maker that probably cost more than her first car. There was a note on the counter, written in a sharp, angular script on heavy cardstock. "Marcus is outside the door. He will drive you. Eat breakfast." There was no signature, but there didn't need to be. Nicholas Giardoni's presence lingered in the instruction, commanding even when he wasn't in the room. When Nicholas arrived an hour later, Vanessa was dressed in her teaching clothes, drinking coffee with a defiance that masked her anxiety. He walked in without knocking. He had a key, of course, and the air in the room seemed to compress. He wasn't wearing the severe black suit from the night of the extraction. He wore a charcoal sweater and dark denim, looking less like a Mafia don and more like a wealthy architect, though the way his eyes scanned the room for threats betrayed his true nature. "You slept," he stated, looking at her. It wasn't a question. "A little," Vanessa replied, setting her mug down. "Nicholas, we need to talk about the arrangement." He paused, leaning against the marble island, crossing his arms over his chest. His biceps strained against the fabric of his sweater. "The arrangement is simple. You stay here. You stay alive. Ryan can't touch you." "I can't just hide here," she insisted, straightening her spine. "I have a job. I have students who depend on me. I am not going to stop living just because Ryan is trying to destroy me. If I hide, he wins." Nicholas frowned, his amber eyes darkening. "If you go out there, you are a target. Ryan is unpredictable. He's desperate." "I am a teacher," Vanessa said firmly. "It's the only piece of my identity I have left that isn't defined by being a widow or a victim. I need to go to work." They stared at each other across the kitchen island. A silent battle of wills. Vanessa expected him to bark an order, to forbid it. That's what men in his position did. They controlled. That's what Ryan would have done. Instead, Nicholas exhaled slowly. He looked at her, really looked at her, assessing her fragility against her steel. "Fine," he said, "but you do not take the subway. You do not drive that Honda. Marcus takes you. He stays on the premises. If you move from one room to another, he knows. If you go to the bathroom, he stands outside the door." "That seems excessive," Vanessa countered, though her relief was palpable. "Excessive is my specialty," Nicholas replied, pushing off the counter. "Marcus is a former Navy SEAL. He is not a chauffeur. He is a weapon I am placing between you and the world. Treat him with respect, but do not think for a second he is there to be your friend. He is there to ensure you come home to this apartment every night." The routine established itself with a jarring speed. Vanessa went from being a woman who checked shadows to a woman who traveled in a cavalcade of protection. The black SUV that took her to Oak Ridge Academy was armored. The door thudded with a reassuring heaviness when it closed. Marcus was a silent giant, a man of few words who scanned the perimeter of the schoolyard with the intensity of a hawk. At first, Vanessa felt conspicuous. She felt like a fraud, a school teacher arriving in a vehicle meant for diplomats or warlords. But as the days turned into a week, the shame was replaced by a profound, intoxicating sense of relief. For the first time in 6 months, she could walk from the car to the school entrance without holding her breath. She knew Ryan was out there. Nicholas's intelligence reports confirmed he was seething, looking for an opening. But the wall around her held. Life inside the penthouse developed its own rhythm. It was a gilded cage, yes, but one filled with warmth. Nicholas visited in the evenings. He didn't come to collect on a debt. He came to cook, It started on a Tuesday. Vanessa had returned from school, exhausted, planning to make grilled cheese for Lily. She found Nicholas in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and a faint scar running down his left wrist. The air smelled of garlic, basil, and simmering tomatoes. "What are you doing?" she asked, stopping in the doorway, her bag sliding from her shoulder. "Making sauce," Nicholas said, not looking up from the onions he was dicing with surgical precision. "The jarred stuff you have in the pantry is an insult to my ancestors." I didn't know you cooked. There are many things you don't know about me, Vanessa," he murmured, scraping the onions into a pan. The sizzle was loud in the quiet room. "Go change. Wash the day off. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. It became a pattern. He would arrive, cook, and they would eat together. It was domesticity viewed through a funhouse mirror. The Mafia boss and the literature teacher breaking bread while a bodyguard stood watch in the hallway. Conversations were tentative at first, navigating the minefield of their realities. But food has a way of disarming defenses. Over plates of osso buco and risotto milanese, the layers began to peel back. "Why?" Vanessa asked one night. It had been 2 weeks since the extraction. Lily was asleep in the other room, tired out from a Saturday playdate with Leo, who had become a fixture in the house. Nicholas paused, his wine glass halfway to his mouth. "Why what? Why this?" She gestured around the room, at the luxury, at him. "You bought my debt. You put a security team on me that cost more than my annual salary. You cooked dinner for my daughter. This isn't just about a letter to Santa, Nicholas. You don't strike me as a man who believes in fairy tales." Nicholas set the glass down. The amber liquid swirled, catching the light. He looked at her, his expression stripping away the charming host mask to reveal the scarred man beneath. "My mother," he said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. She was a saint, a soft woman. She loved opera and gardening. My father, he was efficient, cold, but he wasn't the problem. It was her second husband. After my father went to prison the first time, she remarried. A man who smiled in public and broke things in private. Vanessa held her breath. She recognized the narrative. It was the same story she had lived, just told in a different voice. "I was 10, Nicholas continued, his gaze unfocused, looking at a point in the past. "I heard it, every night, the shouting, the breaking glass, the apologies in the morning. I was small, weak. I couldn't stop him. One night he went too far. She didn't wake up." "Nicholas," Vanessa whispered, her hand instinctively reaching across the table, hovering near his. He looked at her hand, then up to her eyes. "My father got out of prison a year later. He took over the family business. He taught me that power is the only thing that matters, because power is the only thing that protects. I made a vow when I buried her. I swore that if I ever had the power to stop a man like that, I would. I don't care about the law. The law didn't save my mother. The law isn't saving you." Vanessa felt a tear slide down her cheek. "Ryan wasn't like this in the beginning," she confessed, her voice trembling. "He was charming, protective. It felt good, you know? To be wanted that much. To have someone who wanted to know where I was every second. Control often masquerades as care," Nicholas said, his voice hard. "Then I said no," Vanessa said, staring at the tablecloth. "He proposed. I wasn't ready. Mark hadn't been gone that long, and something felt off. When I said no, the mask fell. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. He started small, checking my receipts, criticizing my clothes, then the financial stuff. He knew I was struggling. He used it. He wanted me broken, so he could be the only one to fix me. He wanted a possession, not a partner," Nicholas corrected. "And now I'm here." She looked up at him, her blue eyes searching his face, in another man's house, under another man's protection. "How do I know this isn't just a different version of the same trap? How do I know I'm not trading a jailer for a warden?" It was the question that had been haunting her. Nicholas didn't get angry. He didn't offer platitudes. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, closing the distance between them without touching her. "Because the door is unlocked, Vanessa," he said intensely. You can leave. Right now. You can take Lily and go to Ohio, or Florida, or Paris. I will fund it. I will give you new identities. I will make sure you never see me again, if that is what you want. I am not keeping you here to own you. I am keeping you here to keep you breathing. The sincerity in his voice was a physical force. It hit her in the chest, knocking the wind out of her cynical defenses. He wasn't Ryan. Ryan needed her to be weak. Nicholas was giving her the space to be strong. I don't want to leave, she admitted, the words barely a whisper. Good, Nicholas said, and the corner of his mouth ticked up in a ghost of a smile, because Leo would be devastated. He thinks you're the only person who understands why he draws everything in black and white. The mention of Leo brought a lightness back to the conversation. Saturday playdates had become the highlight of the week. Leo, usually so solemn and withdrawn, came alive around Lily. Lily was a force of nature, loud, colorful, demanding joy. She dragged Leo into her orbit, forcing him to play dress-up, to build forts, to be a child. Vanessa watched them from the kitchen doorway sometimes, seeing the way Leo protected Lily, the way he anticipated her needs. It was a miniature reflection of the man standing beside her. He's a good boy, Vanessa said. He carries a lot of weight for a 7-year-old. He saw too much too young, Nicholas said, standing up to clear the plates. Like me. Vanessa stood up too. They were close now, standing in the narrow space between the table and the counter, the air between them charged with a sudden, undeniable electricity. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was attraction. It was the way his shirts fit across his shoulders. It was the way he looked at her, not as a victim, but as a woman who had walked through fire and come out carrying her daughter. She saw his gaze drop to her lips, then flick back up to her eyes. He wanted to kiss her. She could feel the desire radiating off him, heat against her skin, and God help her. She wanted him to. She wanted to feel something other than fear. She wanted to feel his strength wrapped around her, not as a shield, but as an embrace. But she froze. The trauma was still there, a jagged glass wall between her and intimacy. Nicholas saw the hesitation. He saw the minute tensing of her shoulders. He stepped back immediately, respecting the boundary she hadn't even voiced. I should go, he said, his voice rougher than usual. I have a meeting downtown. Late night. Thank you, Vanessa said, her voice breathless. For dinner, for everything. You don't need to thank me for doing what is right. He walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. Sleep well, Vanessa. Marcus is on duty. Nothing gets through that door. Good night, Nicholas. When the door clicked shut, the silence returned, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was filled with possibility. Vanessa touched her lips, imagining the kiss that hadn't happened. She wasn't just safe. She was starting to feel alive. The next morning, the reality of her dual life hit her. She was grading papers at the kitchen table while Lily watched cartoons. The sun was streaming in, making the room feel bright and hopeful. Mommy, look! Lily pointed at the TV. It's the park. Can we go to the park, please? I haven't been on a swing forever. Vanessa hesitated. The park was public. The park was open. But they had been cooped up for nearly 3 weeks. Lily was climbing the walls. We have to ask Marcus, Vanessa said. Marcus, standing by the door like a statue, nodded once. Central Park is fine, ma'am. We stick to the open areas. I'll have a second unit trail us. A second unit? Vanessa asked. Standard procedure for open ground, Marcus replied. The outing was a military operation disguised as a family afternoon. They took the SUV. They walked to a playground that was fenced in. Marcus stood at the gate, his eyes constantly moving behind dark sunglasses. 2 other men, dressed in jogging clothes but clearly not jogging, loitered near the perimeter. Vanessa sat on a bench, watching Lily pump her legs on the swing, soaring higher and higher. Her daughter's laughter drifted on the wind, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. She took a deep breath of the cold winter air. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't temporary. Maybe she could build a life here. Not as Nicholas's charity case, but as something else. Her phone buzzed. It was the encrypted black phone. Nicholas. I hope she's enjoying the swings. Tell Marcus to check in at 1400 hours. Vanessa smiled, typing back. She loves it. You should be here. She stared at the message before sending it. It was bold. It was an invitation. She pressed send before she could lose her nerve. The reply came instant. Nicholas. Soon. I have some trash to take out first. Vanessa didn't ask what the trash was. She knew. Somewhere in the city, Nicholas was dismantling the threats against her. She should have felt guilty about the violence that implied. She should have felt morally compromised. But as she watched Lily jump off the swing and land in the wood chips, safe and happy, Vanessa realized she didn't care about the morality of the wolf. She only cared that he was guarding her door. That evening, when they returned to the penthouse, the atmosphere had shifted. It felt like home. Vanessa put Lily to bed, and then sat on the plush sofa. A book of poetry in her lap that she wasn't reading. She was waiting. When Nicholas arrived, he looked tired. There were lines of strain around his eyes, and his knuckles were bruised. He didn't offer an explanation, and she didn't ask for one. Is it done? She asked softly. Not yet, Nicholas said, pouring himself a drink from the crystal decanter on the sideboard. Ryan is persistent. He's trying to find leverage. He's digging into old files, trying to find dirt on me to trade. Will he find anything? Nicholas took a sip of the whiskey. He will find enough to scare a normal man, but he won't find anything that can touch you. I've buried your past, Vanessa. As far as the world is concerned, you are a ghost, until I decide you're not. I don't want to be a ghost, she said, standing up and walking toward him. I want to be real. She stopped in front of him. The bruised knuckles caught her eye. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. His skin was rough, warm. He flinched slightly, then relaxed, letting her hold his hand. You are real, Nicholas murmured, looking down at her. You are the most real thing in my life. You hurt your hand. Occupational hazard. Was it for me? Everything I do now is for you, he said. The intensity of the declaration hung between them. Vanessa raised his hand to her lips. She kissed the bruised knuckles, a gesture of acceptance, of gratitude, and of something deeper. Thank you. Nicholas made a sound low in his throat. He used his other hand to cup her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. Vanessa, I'm not scared of you, she whispered. And for the first time, it was the absolute truth. I'm scared of the world, but not you. I will burn the world down before I let it touch you again. He promised. He leaned in. His lips brushed her forehead, a chaste, protective kiss that felt more intimate than anything she had experienced with Ryan. It was a promise stamped on her skin. Be patient, he whispered against her hair. We are almost there. Just a little longer. Vanessa nodded against his chest. She could wait. She had spent years running. She could spend a few weeks waiting for the war to end. She closed her eyes, listening to the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe that the fairy tale might actually have a happy ending, even if the prince was wearing a gun under his jacket. The styrofoam cup of coffee had gone cold an hour ago, leaving a bitter, chalky film on Ryan Foster's tongue. He sat in the driver's seat of a nondescript gray sedan, parked 2 blocks down from the wrought iron gates of Oak Ridge Academy. The heater was broken, and the December chill was seeping through the floorboards, numbing his toes inside his boots. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the burning, acidic rage churning in his gut. He was invisible. In the last week, Ryan had tried to access Vanessa's file in the NYPD database, only to find himself locked out. He had tried to run a credit check, and the system had flagged his credentials for review. He had driven past her old apartment in Queens, intending to leave another message, only to find it empty, the landlord claiming a corporate entity had bought out the lease. Vanessa Turner had simply ceased to exist. Ryan gripped the steering wheel until the leather creaked. He knew who was behind it. Nicholas Giardoni. The name was whispered in the precinct locker rooms, usually followed by a nervous laugh or a change of subject. Giardoni wasn't just a mobster. He was an institution. He didn't just break legs. He erased people. And he had taken Vanessa. She thinks she's better than me, Ryan muttered to the empty car, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. She thinks she can trade up, upgrade from a detective to a Don. The thought twisted inside him. It wasn't just about losing her anymore. It was about the insult. It was about the fact that she had looked at him with terror, but looked at Giardoni with hope. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a burner, a cheap plastic thing he had bought with cash. The caller ID was blocked. Ryan picked it up. "Yeah? You said you had a location." A voice rasped on the other end. It was thick with a Calabrian accent, heavy and dangerous. It was the voice of the 'Ndrangheta, the organization Ryan owed $40,000 to. A debt that was currently accruing interest in the form of threats against his kneecaps. "I'm watching the school," Ryan said, his voice dropping. "She's not here yet. But the kid is inside. They pick her up at 3. And the protection? Heavy," Ryan admitted, watching a black armored SUV idle near the loading zone. A man who looked like a tank in a suit, Marcus, was standing by the rear door. "Giardoni's top guys. You can't just grab her. You need a crew. We do not care about the woman," the voice replied coldly. "We want the Giardoni blood, the nephew. The boy is the leverage we need to make Nicholas renegotiate the shipping lanes." Ryan froze. He had called them to get Vanessa back, to scare Giardoni off. But the 'Ndrangheta didn't play lovers' games. They played for territory. "The girl will be with the boy," Ryan said, a flicker of hesitation crossing his mind. "Lily." He didn't want the kid dead. He just wanted the mother back under his thumb. "Collateral damage," the voice said, dismissive. "Give us the route, Foster. And your debt is wiped clean. You walk away free." Free. The word hung in the air, seductive and desperate. Ryan looked at the school gates. He thought about the internal affairs investigation looming over him. He thought about the debt. He thought about Vanessa sleeping in a penthouse while he froze in a broken car. "They take the east exit," Ryan said, his soul hardening into something unrecognizable. "They head north on Madison. There's a construction bottleneck on 86th. They'll have to slow down there." "Good. Don't be there when it happens." The line went dead. Ryan lowered the phone. He felt sick, but he pushed it down. This was Giardoni's fault. If he hadn't interfered, if he hadn't tried to play hero, none of this would be happening. Ryan started the engine. He was just taking back what was his. If things got messy, well, that was just the cost of doing business. Inside the armored SUV, the air smelled of leather and sanitizer. Vanessa sat in the back seat, checking her watch. 2:58 p.m. The routine had become a sedative. The heavy thump of the doors closing, the bulletproof glass that muted the city noise, the stoic presence of Marcus in the front seat. It all created a bubble of invulnerability. "Traffic looks heavy on the avenue, ma'am," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the mirrors. "We might have to take a detour." "That's fine, Marcus," Vanessa replied. She pulled out her phone, the black one Nicholas had given her. "Vanessa, picking them up now. Dinner tonight?" She stared at the message. It felt intimate, domestic. A month ago, she was barricading doors. Now she was coordinating schedules with a crime lord. The shift had been so gradual, so seductive. She hadn't realized how deep she was until she found herself missing him when he wasn't in the room. "Nicholas, I'll be there by 6. I'm bringing dessert. Stay close to Marcus." Vanessa smiled, a soft expression that softened the lines of worry on her face. The doors of the academy opened. A flood of children in uniforms poured out. "There they are," Vanessa said, leaning forward. Lily and Leo walked out together. They were holding hands, a detail that always made Vanessa's chest ache with sweetness. Leo, usually so guarded, looked relaxed. He was carrying Lily's lunchbox while she animatedly told him a story, her hands flying in the air. Marcus stepped out of the vehicle. He moved with a deceptive lethargy, but Vanessa knew he was coiled like a spring. He opened the rear door. "Hop in, guys," Marcus said, his body angling to block the view of the street, creating a human shield for the children. "Mommy!" Lily climbed in, scrambling over the seat to buckle herself. "Leo shared his fruit snacks with me because mine fell in the mud. "That was very nice of you, Leo," Vanessa said, smiling at the boy as he climbed in next to Lily. Leo shrugged, his cheeks flushing slightly. "It's okay. I didn't want them anyway." Marcus closed the door with a solid thud. He slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors. "Everyone buckled?" "Yes," the children chorused. The SUV pulled away from the curb, merging into the aggressive flow of Manhattan traffic. Vanessa looked at the two children in the rearview mirror. They were safe. They were happy. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax fully into the leather seat. They turned onto 86th Street. Orange cones funneled the traffic into a single lane. A large delivery truck was stalled up ahead, its hazards blinking. "Hold on," Marcus said sharply. His tone had changed. The relaxed chauffeur was gone. The Navy SEAL was back. "What is it?" Vanessa asked, sensing the shift. "That truck. It's not stalled. No driver in the cab." Before Vanessa could process the words, a white van screeched out of the alleyway to their right, jumping the curb and slamming into the side of the SUV. The impact was deafening. Metal shrieked against metal. The heavy armored car rocked violently, thrown sideways but not tipping over. "Heads down! Get down!" Marcus roared. Vanessa didn't think. Instinct took over. She threw herself across the back seat, covering Lily and Leo with her body. "Get down!" The side window, the one right next to where Leo's head had been seconds ago, spider-webbed into 1,000 opaque fractures. It didn't shatter. The bulletproof laminate held, but the force of the blow echoed like a sledgehammer. Men in balaclavas were pouring out of the van. They weren't holding guns. They were holding sledgehammers and crowbars, knowing that ballistics wouldn't penetrate the glass easily. They were trying to breach the doors. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of steel hitting the reinforced glass was horrific, a primal pounding that vibrated through Vanessa's bones. Lily was screaming, a high, terrified sound that tore at Vanessa's soul. Leo was silent, curled into a ball, his hands over his ears. "Hang on!" Marcus yelled. He threw the SUV into reverse. The engine roared, a beast waking up. He slammed the gas, ramming the car behind them to create space. Then he spun the wheel, driving the heavy vehicle up onto the sidewalk, crushing a metal trash can. A gunshot rang out. It wasn't from the attackers. It was Marcus. He had lowered his window just an inch, firing with precision through the gap. One of the attackers dropped his crowbar, clutching his shoulder. The others flinched, retreating for a split second. That second was all Marcus needed. He floored the accelerator. The SUV surged forward, scraping against the brick wall of the building, sparks flying like fireworks past the windows. They smashed through the construction barricade, sending orange cones flying, and burst back onto the open avenue. Vanessa held the children down, her body shaking violently. "Stay down. Don't move. Do not move. Mommy." Lily sobbed into the leather seat. "I want to go home." "We're going home, baby. We're going home," Vanessa chanted, though her eyes were fixed on the shattered spiderweb of the window, realizing how close that hammer had come to her daughter's skull. Marcus was driving like a madman now, weaving through traffic, barking codes into his earpiece. Code red. Package secure but under duress. Sector 4. I need intercept immediately. Vanessa sat up slowly, checking the children. They were physically unharmed, but the terror in their eyes was absolute. Leo was pale, his eyes wide and vacant, retreating into that dark place inside himself. Lily was hysterical, hyperventilating. Vanessa looked out the window. The city looked the same. People walking dogs, shoppers carrying bags. But everything had changed. The war hadn't stayed outside. It had crashed through the door. The penthouse was a fortress under siege. Within minutes of their arrival, the lobby was swarming with Nicholas's men. Marcus carried Leo upstairs. Vanessa carried Lily, refusing to let anyone else touch her. When the elevator doors opened, Nicholas was already there. He looked like a man possessed. His jacket was gone, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up. He had a gun holstered at his hip, openly displayed, no longer hiding the reality of who he was. "Leo? Lily?" he demanded, his voice tight with panic. "They're physically fine," Marcus reported, his voice devoid of emotion. The vehicle took the brunt. The glass held. Nicholas let out a breath that sounded like a curse. He moved toward them, reaching out for Leo, pulling his nephew into a fierce embrace. Then he turned to Vanessa and Lily. He reached for them. Vanessa stepped back. The movement was sharp, a recoil. She held Lily tighter against her chest, her eyes blazing with a fire Nicholas had never seen before. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Pure, white-hot maternal fury. "Don't," she hissed. Nicholas froze, his hand suspended in the air. "Vanessa, let me check." "You said they were safe," she screamed. The sound echoed off the marble walls, startling the security team. "You promised me. You said Ryan couldn't touch us here." "This wasn't Ryan," Nicholas said, his voice dropping, trying to de-escalate. "This was the Ndrangheta. They were trying to take Leo." "I don't care who it was," Vanessa yelled, tears finally spilling over, hot and angry. "My daughter was in a car that was being smashed with sledgehammers. There were guns, Nicholas. A man was shot 2 feet away from my 6-year-old. She was shaking, the adrenaline crash hitting her hard. She put Lily down, guiding her toward the bedroom where a nanny, one of Nicholas's vetted staff, was waiting to comfort the children. "Take them," Vanessa ordered the woman. "Hot chocolate, cartoons. Close the door and turn the volume up. Do not let them come out." As soon as the bedroom door clicked shut, Vanessa spun on Nicholas. "You brought this to us," she accused, advancing on him. "I thought Ryan was the danger. But you are a magnet for war. You put my daughter in the crossfire of a Mafia feud." "I protected her," Nicholas roared back, his own control snapping. The fear of losing them had stripped away his composure. "My men saved them. If you had been in that Honda of yours, you would be dead right now. Ryan sold you out, Vanessa. He gave them the route. Because of you," she countered, poking him in the chest. "Because he can't get to me. He went to them. We are pawns in your game. I am not doing this anymore. I am taking Lily and I am leaving." "No, you are not." The command was absolute. Nicholas stepped into her space, towering over her. "You are not leaving this apartment. The Ndrangheta has marked us. If you walk out that door, you won't make it to the airport. They don't care that you're innocent. They care that you are mine." "Yours," Vanessa laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound. "I am not yours, Nicholas. I am a mother, and you are the reason my child is traumatized. I am the reason she is alive." Nicholas grabbed her shoulders, giving her a slight shake to break her hysteria. "Look at me. Ryan tried to have you kidnapped. The Ndrangheta tried to take Leo. Do you think you can fight them with a restraining order and a kitchen knife? I am the only wall standing between you and a shallow grave." Vanessa stared at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. She saw the desperation. And beneath it all, she saw the guilt. "Is it worth it?" she whispered, the fight draining out of her, replaced by a hollow ache. "Is all this power, all this money? Is it worth it if you can't even keep a 7-year-old safe on a school run?" Nicholas flinched as if she had slapped him. He released her shoulders and stepped back. He looked at his hands, then at the gun on his hip. "No," he admitted, his voice ragged. "It's not." He walked over to the window, looking out at the city that was slowly turning dark. "I thought I could control it. I thought I was strong enough to keep the darkness out of this house. I was arrogant." He turned back to her. He looked older, tired. "I would give it all up," he said quietly. "The business, the territory, the money. I would burn it all down right now if it meant undoing what happened today. I would walk away from everything just to see you smile again." Vanessa watched him. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to run into his arms and let him hold her, but the sound of metal hitting glass was still ringing in her ears. "But you can't," she said. "Can you?" "No," Nicholas said, the word heavy with defeat. "Not now. Not while they are hunting us. If I show weakness now, if I step down, they will kill us all. The only way out is through." He walked over to the sideboard and poured a drink. His hand was shaking. The invincible Don, the man who frightened the NYPD, was trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Vanessa looked at the bedroom door where the children were hiding. Then she looked at the man standing alone in the middle of his empire. She realized with a sinking heart that he was right. Leaving was a death sentence. Staying was a nightmare. "Fix it," she said, her voice hard. Nicholas looked up. "You said you fix things," Vanessa said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "You said you are the monster that bad men fear. Then go be the monster, Nicholas. End this. Destroy Ryan. Destroy the people who touched my daughter's car. Do whatever you have to do. But do not come back to me until it is done." Nicholas set the glass down. The steel returned to his spine. The amber eyes cleared, the hesitation evaporating. She had given him permission. She had given him a directive. "I will," Nicholas promised. "I will rain hell on them." He walked to the door. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't try to touch her. He knew he had lost that privilege the moment the glass cracked. He opened the door, stopping only to look back at her one last time. "Lock the door, Vanessa, and don't wait up." He left. Vanessa stood in the silence of the penthouse. She walked over to the door and engaged the deadbolt, the chain, and the electronic keypad. Then she slid down to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. And finally, silently, she began to scream into her hands. The silence that descended upon the penthouse in the days following the attack was not the peaceful quiet of safety. It was the suffocating stillness of a holding cell. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight against the panoramic windows, shutting out the gray Manhattan skyline and the world that had tried to smash its way in with sledgehammers. Inside, the air was recycled and stale, thick with the unsaid and the undone. Vanessa Turner had retreated. She had turned the guest suite into a bunker, barricading herself and Lily inside with a ferocity that even Marcus, the stoic bodyguard, dared not challenge. For 48 hours, she existed in a twilight state of maternal vigilance. She watched Lily sleep, counting every breath, flinching at every whimper. When Lily was awake, Vanessa was a manic conductor of distraction, filling the air with cartoons, coloring books, and forced cheerfulness, terrified that silence would allow the trauma to settle into her daughter's bones permanently. But trauma is a gas. It expands to fill the space available. On the third night, the dam broke. It was 3 a.m. The penthouse was asleep, or pretending to be. Vanessa was dozing in the armchair next to the bed, her neck stiff, her hand resting on Lily's duvet. Lily sat up with a gasp that tore through the room like fabric ripping. It wasn't a slow waking. It was an instant, violent ejection from sleep. "No! No! The glass!" Lily screamed, thrashing against the sheets. "Mommy! The hammer!" Vanessa was on the bed in a heartbeat, gathering the small, trembling body into her arms. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. It's just a dream. You're safe." "They're coming in!" Lily shrieked, her eyes wide and unseeing, trapped in the loop of the memory. She clawed at Vanessa's shirt, her fingernails digging in, frantic for purchase. "The bad men! Don't let them take Leo!" "Shh! Shh! Nobody is taking anyone!" Vanessa rocked her, tears pricking her own eyes. She felt helpless. Her love, usually a shield, felt like tissue paper against this terror. "Lily, look at me. Look at Mommy." But Lily couldn't hear her. The panic attack was a spiraling vortex. She was hyperventilating, her small chest heaving, her face turning blotchy and red. The bedroom door opened. Vanessa's head snapped up, a snarl rising in her throat, ready to defend the perimeter. Nicholas stood there. He was barefoot, wearing loose sweatpants and a black t-shirt that clung to his frame. His hair was messy, his face shadowed with stubble. He didn't look like the Don. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days because he was haunting his own hallway. "Get out," Vanessa hissed, though the venom was weak. "She doesn't need to see you." Nicholas ignored her. He didn't look at Vanessa. His focus was entirely on the screaming child. He walked to the bed, moving with a deliberate slowness to avoid startling them further. "Lily," he said. His voice was not the command of a boss. It was a rumble, deep and grounding, like the earth shifting. Lily didn't stop screaming, but the pitch changed. She registered his presence. Nicholas sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't reach for her. He simply sat there, a solid, immovable object in the chaos. He began to speak, but not in English. Ascolta, piccola guerriera. Il buio ha paura della luce. The Italian flowed from him, melodic and rhythmic. It was a stark contrast to the harshness of the screams. Vanessa watched, stunned into silence. In English, it meant, "Listen, little warrior. The dark is afraid of the light. No monster could touch her while the dragon was awake. And he was here. Non c'è mostro che possa toccarti quando il drago è sveglio. E il drago è qui. Sono qui." Lily's sobbing hitched. She looked at him, her tear-filled eyes wide. The strange words were a distraction, pulling her brain out of the panic loop. "What?" she hiccuped, sniffing loudly. Nicholas leaned in slightly, his amber eyes soft in the dim light. "It's an old spell," he lied effortlessly. "My nonna taught it to me. It keeps the nightmares locked in a box." "A spell?" Lily whispered, her grip on Vanessa loosening slightly. "See." Nicholas nodded solemnly. "But it only works if you breathe with me. Can you do that?" "Like this." He took a deep, exaggerated breath, inhaling through his nose and exhaling slowly through his mouth. Lily watched him, fascinated. Slowly, shakily, she mimicked him. Again, Nicholas instructed softly. In and out, pushing the bad dreams away. They breathed together for 5 minutes, the large, dangerous man and the small, frightened girl. Vanessa watched from her position on the pillows, feeling her own heart rate synchronize with theirs. She saw the tension drain out of Lily's shoulders. She saw the terror recede, replaced by exhaustion. "Is the glass fixed?" Lily asked, her voice small and sleepy. "The glass is stronger now," Nicholas promised. "I made it out of diamonds this time. Nothing breaks diamonds." "Okay," Lily murmured. Her eyelids fluttered. She leaned back against Vanessa, but her eyes stayed on Nicholas. "Stay?" Vanessa stiffened. She looked at Nicholas. This was the man who had brought the war to their doorstep. But looking at him now, seeing the raw pain and tenderness in his face, she couldn't send him away. "Stay," Vanessa whispered, giving him permission. Nicholas nodded. He shifted, sitting on the floor with his back against the bed frame, keeping vigil. Lily fell asleep within minutes. Silence returned to the room, but it was different now. It wasn't hostile. It was heavy with shared burden. "I didn't know you spoke Italian to her," Vanessa said softly into the dark. "I speak the language of whatever works," Nicholas replied without turning around. "My mother used to sing to me after the bad nights. I don't sing, so I improvise." "You called her a warrior," Vanessa noted. "Piccola guerriera." "She is," Nicholas said. "She survived a siege at 6 years old. She is braver than most of my captains." "She shouldn't have to be brave," Vanessa said, the bitterness creeping back in. "She should just be a child." "I know," Nicholas said. The weight of his guilt was a palpable thing in the room. "I know, Vanessa." He stayed until dawn broke, disappearing before Lily woke up, leaving only the scent of sandalwood and the memory of his low voice in the dark. The next afternoon, Vanessa finally emerged from the bedroom. She needed coffee. She needed to feel like a human being and not just a sentry. The penthouse was quiet. Marcus was posted by the front door reading a tactical manual. The chef had left a tray of pastries that had gone stale. Vanessa walked into the living room and stopped. Leo was there. He was lying on his stomach on the Persian rug, surrounded by crayons and markers. He was drawing with a furious intensity, his tongue poking out of the corner of his mouth. He looked up when he heard her. His face was pale, his dark eyes shadowed. He looked smaller than usual. "Hi, Miss Turner," he said quietly. "Hi, Leo," Vanessa said, forcing a smile. She felt a pang of guilt. In her obsession with protecting Lily, she had forgotten that Leo had been in that car too. He had seen the hammers. He had heard the gunshot, and he didn't have a mother to hold him through the nightmares. She walked over and sat on the floor beside him. "What are you drawing?" Leo didn't answer immediately. He picked up a gray marker and shaded a section of the paper. Then he pushed the drawing toward her. It wasn't the usual stick figures. Leo was talented. The drawing showed a large, imposing structure, a castle, or maybe a fortress. It had high walls made of black bricks. Inside the walls, there were 4 figures. A tall man in a suit, drawn in black ink. Nicholas. A woman with long yellow hair. Vanessa. A little girl with pigtails holding a flower. Lily. And a smaller boy, standing slightly apart, holding a shield. Leo. This is us, Leo explained, pointing to the figures. Inside the fort. The walls are magic. Bad guys can't climb them. Vanessa traced the lines of the drawing. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. It was a child's desperate attempt to create order out of chaos. It's wonderful, Leo, she said, her throat tight. You made the walls very strong. Leo looked down at his hands. He was twisting the gray marker, his knuckles white. Are you going to leave? He asked. The question was barely a whisper, but it hit Vanessa with the force of a physical blow. She looked at him. What? My mom left, Leo said, his voice trembling but his eyes dry. He had learned not to cry a long time ago. She said it was too scary. She said Uncle Nick's life was too loud. She packed a bag and she left in the middle of the night. She didn't take me. Vanessa felt the air leave her lungs. Nicholas had mentioned his sister left, but he hadn't explained the mechanics of it. He hadn't explained that she had abandoned her son to save herself. I heard you yelling, Leo continued, looking up at her with a terrifying vulnerability. You yelled at Uncle Nick. You said you were taking Lily. You said you were leaving. Vanessa remembered the scene in the hallway. The rage. The accusations. She hadn't realized Leo was listening. Of course he was listening. He was always listening. Leo, if you go, Leo said, his voice cracking. Who is going to watch Lily? Uncle Nick is busy. He has to fight the bad men. If you go, Lily will be alone. And I don't want to be alone again. He wasn't asking her to stay for Nicholas. He wasn't asking for himself, really. He was asking because he viewed them as a unit, a fragile ecosystem that his mother had destroyed once before. He was terrified that the pattern was repeating, that the women he loved always left, because the Giardoni blood was a curse. Vanessa looked at the drawing, the fortress, the 4 of them inside. She realized with a sudden jarring clarity that her plan to leave was a fantasy. If she left, she would be dragging Lily back into a world where Ryan Foster could hunt them. Without Nicholas, she was vulnerable. But more than that, if she left, she would be confirming Leo's worst fear, that he was unlovable, that he was too much trouble, that he was destined to be abandoned. She thought about Nicholas on the floor last night, breathing with Lily. She thought about the car, Marcus taking a bullet to get them out. They weren't just her protectors. They were her family, dysfunctional, dangerous, and scarred. But family. Vanessa reached out and pulled Leo into her arms. He stiffened for a second, then melted, burying his face in her shoulder. He didn't cry, but he held onto her shirt with a grip that spoke of desperation. I'm not going anywhere, Leo, she whispered fiercely into his hair. I promise. I am not like your mom. I don't run. You promise? He muffled against her shoulder. I promise. We are going to stay in the fort, all of us. She held him until he pulled away, looking relieved but still wary. Can I give this to Uncle Nick? He's in his office. He's sad too. Yes, Vanessa said, standing up and smoothing her shirt. A new resolve hardened in her chest. The fear was still there, but it was no longer steering the ship. Actually, I'll go with you. I need to talk to him. The door to Nicholas's study was ajar. The room was dark, illuminated only by the glow of multiple computer monitors and the amber light of a desk lamp. Vanessa stood in the doorway, telling Leo to go play with Lily for a bit. She watched Nicholas for a moment before he noticed her. He was sitting behind the massive oak desk, but he wasn't working. He was staring at a wall of monitors showing CCTV feeds of the city. A glass of whiskey sat untouched near his hand. He had shed the armor of the dawn. He looked like a man serving a life sentence in his own mind. Scattered across the desk were photographs. Surveillance shots of Ryan Foster. grainy images of men getting into vans, maps of the Ndrangheta territories. He looked up when she stepped inside. His eyes were red-rimmed, dull. He didn't straighten up. He didn't put the mask back on. "I told Marcus to keep the perimeter tight," Nicholas said, his voice rough. "You shouldn't be wandering around." "I'm not wandering," Vanessa said, walking into the room. She felt strange, calm, focused. The hysteria of the attack had burned itself out, leaving behind cold ash and determination. "I'm looking for you." Nicholas laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You found me, drunk and useless." "You're not drunk," she noted, pointing to the full glass. "And you're not useless. You're just wallowing." Nicholas looked at her, surprised by her tone. "I almost got your daughter killed, Vanessa. I think I'm entitled to a little self-loathing." "Leo thinks you're sad," she said, stepping closer to the desk. "He thinks I'm going to leave like his mother did. He thinks it's happening all over again." Nicholas flinched. "I will explain it to him. I will tell him I sent you away for your own safety." "You're not sending me anywhere," Vanessa said firmly. Nicholas sat up straighter. "Vanessa, we discussed this. It's not safe. The Ndrangheta is going to come for me whether I am here or in Ohio," she interrupted. "Ryan is going to hunt me whether I have your name attached to me or not. I stopped running the night I called you. I'm not starting again." She walked around the desk. She stood next to his chair. She looked at the surveillance photos. She saw Ryan Foster's face, arrogant, laughing with another cop. She felt a surge of hatred so pure it almost frightened her. "I was angry yesterday," Vanessa said quietly. "I blamed you. And maybe part of it is your fault. But Ryan is the one who made the call. Ryan is the one who sold a child to wolves to save his own skin. He is a dead man walking," Nicholas said, the lethality returning to his voice. "Good," Vanessa said. She turned to face him. "But I don't want you to just kill him, Nicholas." Nicholas looked at her, confused. "What? If you kill him, he becomes a martyr. A cop killed in the line of duty. The department will rally. They'll come after you with everything they have. And we'll never be free. We'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders." She reached out and touched the drawing Leo had given her, which she had placed on the desk. The fortress. "I don't want to hide in a fortress forever," she said. "I want to live. And to do that, we have to destroy them completely. Not just their bodies. Their lives." Nicholas stared at her. He saw the shift. He saw the woman who had been trembling in a classroom replaced by someone who was learning to wield power. He stood up, towering over her, but this time it wasn't intimidating. It was equalizing. "You're right," he murmured, admiration flickering in his eyes. "Killing Ryan is easy. Destroying him, that takes finesse." He reached for a file on the corner of the desk. He flipped it open. "I have been building a case," Nicholas said, his voice gaining strength. "Real evidence. Not planted, not faked. Voice recordings of him negotiating with the Calabrians. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. Video of him accepting bribes. It's enough to put him away for 20 years. It's enough to burn down the entire precinct's corrupt leadership." "Why haven't you used it?" "Because it exposes my sources," Nicholas admitted. "It requires me to step into the light, to use legal channels. It's risky. It breaks the code of silence." "Break it," Vanessa said. "The code didn't save your mother. The code didn't save Leo's mom. Rewrite the rules." Nicholas looked at the surveillance map. "And the Ndrangheta. They are businessmen, aren't they?" Vanessa asked, echoing something he had told her once. "Make it bad business to hunt us." Nicholas nodded slowly. The gears were turning. The strategist was waking up. They are overextended in the port. If I cut their supply chain, if I offer their rivals a percentage of the shipping lanes in exchange for neutrality, I can isolate them. I can make them bleed money until they beg for a truce. "Then do it," Vanessa said. "Do it all. Burn Ryan to the ground with the truth. Starve the Ndrangheta. And when the dust settles, we decide what happens next." "And what happens next?" Nicholas asked, his voice low, intimate. He stepped closer, invading her space, testing the waters. Vanessa didn't back down. She looked up at him. She saw the scars, the exhaustion, the violence, and the desperate love he held for his family. "You offered me a choice," she said. "You said I could go, or I could stay. You said you would give me a new life. I did. I don't want a new life," Vanessa whispered. "I want this one. The one with Lily and Leo. The one with you." She reached up and placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating steady and strong. "But I need to know that we are partners in this," she added. "No more hiding things. No more making decisions for me. If we fight together." Nicholas covered her hand with his. "Together," he vowed. "From now on, nothing happens without you knowing. No secrets." "Okay," Vanessa exhaled, a tremendous weight lifting from her shoulders. "Then let's finish this." Nicholas turned back to the monitors, but the despair was gone. He picked up his phone. He dialed a number. "Silvio," Nicholas said, his voice crisp and commanding. "Wake the lawyers. Call the contact at the FBI, and get the jet ready for a meeting in Palermo. We are going to end the war." He looked at Vanessa as he spoke, and for the first time in days, he smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile, but it was shared. They were no longer victims waiting for the blow. They were the storm gathering on the horizon. The digital clock on the wall of the secure command center hummed with a quiet, relentless precision. It was 8:59 a.m. In exactly 60 seconds, the fragile architecture of Detective Ryan Foster's life was going to collapse. Not with an explosion, but with the click of a mouse. Vanessa stood behind Nicholas's chair, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. The room, located in a sub-basement of one of Giardoni Enterprises' legitimate skyscrapers, was a stark contrast to the chaotic warmth of the penthouse. Here, everything was cold steel, glowing monitors, and the hushed murmurs of analysts who treated cyber warfare with the same detachment as accounting. "Are you ready?" Nicholas asked, looking up at her. The harsh blue light of the screens reflected in his amber eyes, making them look like shards of glass. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His white shirt was rolled to the elbows, revealing the tension in his forearms. "I've been ready for 6 months," Vanessa replied. Her voice was steady. The fear that had defined her existence had calcified into a hard, cold resolve. She looked at the screen in front of Silvio, Nicholas's head of intelligence. It displayed a progress bar, currently paused at 0. The file prepared for the authorities was a masterpiece of forensic destruction. It didn't just contain the evidence of Ryan's harassment of Vanessa. That was merely the emotional hook. The real weight lay in the financial records. Nicholas's team had traced Ryan's gambling debts to the Queen's bookie, linked those debts to specific favors Ryan had pulled for the 'Ndrangheta, and corroborated it all with audio recordings from the bugged precinct phones that Ryan thought were secure. They had him on tape selling police patrol routes to drug runners. They had him on video accepting cash in a diner parking lot. It was undeniable, it was comprehensive, and it was anonymous. "Send it," Nicholas commanded. Silvio pressed the key. On the screen, the bar shot to 100%. The packets of data were routed through servers in Singapore and Reykjavik before landing simultaneously in the inboxes of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau, and the private email of a federal prosecutor known for his ruthless ambition. "Package delivered," Silvio confirmed. The prosecutor opens his email at 9:05. The FBI automated system has already flagged the keywords police corruption and organized crime linkage. Nicholas spun his chair around to face Vanessa. He took her hand. "Now we wait. It won't be long." The waiting was the hardest part, but it was also the most satisfying. They moved to a side office with a television tuned to the local news, though the real show was on a private feed Nicholas had accessed. A traffic camera positioned directly across from the 19th precinct. At 10:45 a.m., the street outside the precinct erupted. By then, a federal judge had already signed the warrants. The evidence packet Silvio had dropped into their system, leaving no room for hesitation. Vanessa watched, mesmerized, as 4 black SUVs with federal plates screeched to a halt at the curb. Men in FBI windbreakers swarmed the entrance, moving with a speed and aggression that signaled this wasn't a courtesy call. "There," Nicholas pointed at the screen. Ryan was being led out. He wasn't walking with the swagger she remembered. He was being dragged. His hands were cuffed behind his back, his jacket was torn at the shoulder, and his face was a mask of shock and fury. He was shouting something at the agents, struggling, trying to leverage authority he no longer possessed. Vanessa leaned closer to the screen. She needed to see it. She needed to see the moment the invincible monster realized he was just a man in handcuffs. As the agents shoved him into the back of the federal vehicle, Ryan looked up. He looked directly at the traffic camera, as if he knew she was watching. For a second, the old terror flared in Vanessa's gut. A phantom limb pain from a wound that was finally healing. But then she saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't rage anymore. It was panic. He was small. He was pathetic. He was gone. "He's done," Nicholas said, his voice low and final. "The federal charges carry a mandatory minimum of 20 years. With the Ndrangheta connection exposed, he'll be placed in protective custody, which means isolation. He will never walk free again. And even if he does, he will be an old, broken man." Vanessa let out a breath she felt she had been holding since December. Her knees went weak, and Nicholas stood up immediately to catch her, pulling her against his chest. "It's over," she whispered into his shirt. "Part 1 is over," Nicholas corrected gently, stroking her hair. "Now for the difficult part." Ryan was a nuisance. The Ndrangheta is a business partner, and renegotiating a partnership requires a different kind of currency. The meeting took place 2 days later in a private warehouse in the Navy Yard. It was neutral ground, a Switzerland of concrete and steel beams amidst the turf war. Nicholas had insisted Vanessa stay at the penthouse, but she had refused. They were partners, she argued. She wouldn't sit in the room, but she would be in the car, on the perimeter. She needed to know that the threat to her daughter was truly extinguished, not just delayed. Nicholas sat at a metal table in the center of the cavernous space. Opposite him sat Don Calabrese, the head of the Ndrangheta faction in New York. Calabrese was an older man, deceptively grandfatherly, with silver hair and a taste for silk scarves. He was flanked by 3 bodyguards. Nicholas had only Marcus and Silvio. "You cost me a detective, Nicholas," Calabrese said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "Foster was useful, cheap, and now the FBI is crawling all over the precinct, making my other contacts nervous. Foster was a liability," Nicholas replied calmly, his hands folded on the table. "He was emotional, reckless. He brought heat to a simple extraction because of a personal vendetta. You don't want men like that on your payroll, Don Calabrese. They talk." "He was trying to retrieve something you stole," Calabrese countered, his eyes narrowing. "The woman. We were told she had information." "You were lied to," Nicholas lied smoothly. "The woman has nothing. She is a civilian. Foster was obsessed. He used you to do his dirty work. And in doing so, he put my family in the crossfire. My nephew was in that car. The mention of family shifted the temperature in the room. Even in the underworld, there were rules. Endangering children was bad for business. It brought the kind of public outrage that politicians couldn't ignore. An unfortunate error, Calabrese conceded, though his tone suggested he didn't care much about errors unless they cost him money. "But you have insulted my organization. You have hidden the woman. You have attacked my men. There is a price for peace, Giardoni." "I agree," Nicholas said. He reached into his jacket pocket. The bodyguards flinched, reaching for their weapons. Nicholas moved slowly, pulling out a single folded document. He slid it across the table. Calabrese put on his reading glasses. He scanned the document. His eyebrows rose. "The Newark shipping lanes?" Calabrese asked, looking up. "You are giving me access to the Newark lanes? That is 20% of your import revenue." 15, Nicholas corrected. "But yes, you get priority access on Tuesdays and Thursdays. No inspection, no questions asked. In exchange for 2 things. Name them. 1. The debt Ryan Foster owed you is considered paid in full by this transfer. You do not pursue it. You do not look for assets to seize. Done. 2. Vanessa Turner, her daughter Lily, and anyone associated with them are off limits, permanently. If one of your men even looks at them on the street, I will consider the truce broken, and I will burn Newark to the ground with your shipments inside it." Calabrese looked at the paper, calculating the millions of dollars in profit the shipping lanes represented versus the value of a single vendetta against a schoolteacher. It wasn't even a choice. It was simple arithmetic. "You pay a high price for a woman, Nicholas," Calabrese noted, a smirk playing on his lips. "Is she made of gold?" "She is the mother of the child who makes my nephew smile," Nicholas said, his voice devoid of humor. "That makes her priceless." Calabrese signed the paper. "We have a truce. The woman is a ghost to us." When Nicholas returned to the armored SUV parked 100 yards away, Vanessa was waiting in the back seat. She looked at his face, searching for blood or bruises. There were none. He looked tired, but unburdened. "It's done," he said, sliding in beside her. "They accepted the terms." "What did you give them?" Vanessa asked. She knew enough about his world now to know that peace was never free. "Nothing I can't earn back in 5 years," Nicholas dismissed. "Some logistics routes, cargo space." "You gave up territory," she realized, watching his profile. "You gave up power." Nicholas turned to her. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers. "I traded potential profit for guaranteed safety. In my world, that is the only victory that matters. They won't touch you, Vanessa. Not ever again. You can walk down the street. You can take Lily to the park. It's over." Vanessa squeezed his hand. She felt the tears prickling her eyes. Not tears of fear this time, but of overwhelming, exhausting relief. The cage was open. The predator was caged. And the man beside her had just paid a king's ransom to ensure her freedom. The transition to normalcy was not immediate, but it was steady, like the slow melting of winter ice. 3 weeks after Ryan's arrest, the headlines had moved on, but the impact on Vanessa's life was permanent. She resigned from Oak Ridge Academy. It held too many memories of fear, of dodging calls in the hallway, of Ryan waiting by the lockers. With Nicholas's help, and despite her protests, he insisted it was part of the security protocol. She secured a position at the private school Leo attended in Westchester. It was a smaller environment, rigorous but kind, set on a sprawling campus of green lawns and stone buildings. The commute from the city was long, which led to the next logical step in their evolving life. "It makes no sense to drive back and forth," Nicholas had argued over dinner one night. "The estate in Westchester is 10 minutes from the school. It has the gardens. It has the space." Vanessa had hesitated, guarding her independence, but Lily had cast the deciding vote. The estate had a treehouse, and Leo was there on weekends. They moved into the guest wing of the Giardoni estate as a temporary measure that everyone knew was permanent. The nightmares stopped gradually. The first week, Lily woke up twice. The second week, once. By the third week, she slept through the night, waking only to demand pancakes or to ask if Leo was coming over. The diamond glass Nicholas had promised seemed to hold. Vanessa watched her daughter bloom. The shadows under Lily's eyes disappeared. She laughed louder. She ran faster. She started calling Nicholas Mr. Nick. And then, slipping occasionally, just Nick. And Vanessa, she breathed. For the first time in years, she breathed air that didn't taste like anxiety. She sat in the garden of the estate, grading papers for her new literature class, watching the sun set over the trees. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was planning. She was thinking about curriculum changes, about planting a vegetable garden in the spring, about the way Nicholas looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. He kept his promise of transparency. He told her when he had late meetings. He told her, in broad strokes, about the business, the legitimate side, which was growing, and the illegitimate side, which he was slowly, methodically shrinking to reduce exposure. He was keeping his word. He was building a fortress, not just of stone, but of trust. The true test came 2 months later. "Sunday dinner," Nicholas announced one morning, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "My aunt wants to meet you." Vanessa froze, a coffee mug halfway to her lips. "Your aunt? The one who runs the charities?" "And the cousins, and the consigliere, and basically everyone who shares my DNA or my payroll." Nicholas turned to her, his expression serious but his eyes dancing with a hint of amusement. It is a summons. We cannot refuse. They know about me? Vanessa, you are living in the family estate. You drive my car. My nephew draws pictures of you. The family has known about you since the day I bought your debt. They have been patiently waiting for me to present you. Present me? Vanessa felt a wave of nerves. Like a debutante? Like the woman who brought the Don to his knees. Nicholas corrected, stepping closer and kissing her forehead. Wear something red. My aunt hates red. It asserts dominance. The dinner was held at the matriarch's house in Long Island, a sprawling mansion that smelled of roasting garlic and judgment. There were 30 people there, loud, boisterous, speaking a rapid-fire mix of English and Italian. When Nicholas walked in with Vanessa on his arm and Lily holding his hand, the room went silent. It was a heavy, assessing silence. Dozens of eyes scrutinized Vanessa. They looked for weakness. They looked for the gold digger. They looked for the victim. Vanessa lifted her chin. She was wearing red, a deep crimson sheath dress that fit her perfectly. She wasn't the trembling teacher anymore. She was the woman who had stared down the Ndrangheta. She squeezed Nicholas's arm, not for support, but to signal she was ready. Zia Maria, Nicholas said, approaching the formidable elderly woman at the head of the table. This is Vanessa. And Lily. The old woman stared at Vanessa with eyes like black olives. She looked at the dress. She looked at Nicholas. Then she looked at Lily, who was hiding behind Nicholas's leg. She is thin, Zia Maria declared finally. She needs to eat. The tension broke. Food was pressed upon them. Cousins introduced themselves. Lily was whisked away by a gaggle of second cousins to see a litter of puppies in the sunroom. Vanessa found herself seated next to Nicholas, navigating the interrogation disguised as small talk. She held her own. When a cousin asked about her late husband, she answered without faltering. When another asked about her intentions, she looked him in the eye and said she intended to be happy, which was a revolutionary concept in this room. Later in the evening, as espresso was being served, a man approached Nicholas. He was older, with sharp features and a suit that cost more than Vanessa's lifetime earnings. Giovanni, the consigliere, the advisor, the man who whispered in the king's ear. Nicholas, Giovanni said, nodding to Vanessa but addressing the boss. A moment? Nicholas didn't move. You can speak freely, Giovanni. Vanessa stays. Giovanni raised an eyebrow. This was a breach of protocol. Business was not discussed in front of outsiders, but he saw the set of Nicholas's jaw and decided not to push it. We have reports from the port, Giovanni said, keeping his voice low. The Calabresi family is enjoying their new access. Profits are down 8% this quarter due to the concession. I am aware, Nicholas said, sipping his espresso. The captains are grumbling, Giovanni continued, his gaze flicking to Vanessa. They respect you, Nicholas. They fear you, but they question the logic. To give up territory, to show such generosity to a rival, for personal reasons. He let the words hang there. Personal reasons. It was a polite way of saying for a woman. They worry it shows weakness, Giovanni clarified. They worry you are distracted. A man with a family is a man with a soft underbelly. A man who can be leveraged. Vanessa felt her face heat up. She was the weakness. She was the liability. Nicholas set his cup down on the saucer with a sharp clatter. The sound cut through the murmuring of the room. He turned his body fully toward Giovanni, his presence suddenly expanding, dominating the space. Weakness, Nicholas repeated, testing the word. He looked around the room. He looked at Leo, who was laughing with Lily in the corner. He looked at Vanessa, sitting beside him in her red dress, her head held high despite the scrutiny. Before, Nicholas said, his voice carrying clearly to the nearby tables, I fought for territory. I fought for numbers on a ledger. I fought because it was what my father did. And I was tired, Giovanni. I was a machine running on empty. He reached out and took Vanessa's hand, placing it on the table, covering it with his own. You look at them, and you see a vulnerability, Nicholas said, his amber eyes burning with a fierce, terrifying conviction. You see targets, but you are mistaken." He leaned in closer to his consigliere. "A man who fights for money will eventually negotiate. A man who fights for land will eventually settle. But a man who fights for his family?" Nicholas shook his head slowly. "That man does not stop. That man does not negotiate. That man will burn the world to ash to protect what is his." The room was silent. "They are not my weakness, Giovanni," Nicholas declared, his voice ringing with absolute truth. "They are the reason I built this empire. They are the reason I wake up. And they are the reason that anyone who crosses me now will not just face a dawn. They will face a force of nature." He squeezed Vanessa's hand. "So tell the captains," Nicholas finished, "that the lion is not distracted. The lion has finally found something worth hunting for. And God help the jackals who forget that." Giovanni stared at Nicholas for a long moment. He looked at the fire in his boss's eyes, a fire that had been absent for years. He looked at Vanessa, who didn't look away, who met his gaze with a steady, fierce intelligence. Slowly, Giovanni nodded. A look of respect crossed his face. "I will tell them," Giovanni said, bowing his head slightly to Nicholas, and then, more deeply, to Vanessa. "It seems the family is stronger than it has been in a generation. Cent'anni," he finished, a wish for 100 years of life. He walked away. Nicholas turned to Vanessa. The fierceness faded, replaced by a warm, intimate pride. "Did I overdo it?" he whispered. "A little bit with the burning the world to ash," Vanessa whispered back, smiling. "But I think they got the point." "Good," Nicholas said. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles in full view of his entire family. "Because I meant every word." Vanessa looked at him. Surrounded by the opulence of his ancestors, the weight of his history, and the dangers of his future, she thought about the letter Lily had sent to Santa. She thought about the dossier that had destroyed Ryan. She thought about the peace treaty bought with shipping lanes. She realized then that she wasn't just observing the power. She was part of it. She was the anchor that kept the ship from drifting into the dark. "I know," she said. "I'm not going anywhere, Nicholas. We burned together." And as the dessert was served and the laughter resumed around them, Vanessa knew that the war was truly over. The healing had begun. And the family, this strange, cobbled-together, dangerous, beautiful family, was finally whole. The snow fell differently in Westchester. In the city, winter was a slushy, gray endurance test, a battle against black ice and biting wind that tunneled through the avenues. Here, on the sprawling grounds of the Giardoni estate, the snow was a blanket of pristine, untouched silence. It coated the ancient oaks and the stone walls of the manor in a soft, glittering white that looked like sugar spun by a giant's hand. Vanessa stood at the French doors of the main living room, a mug of hot cider warming her hands. She watched the two figures bundled in neon-bright snowsuits running across the vast lawn. Lily, a streak of pink, was attempting to tackle Leo, who was laughing, a genuine bell-like sound that carried through the crisp air. It had been 6 months since the treaty with the 'Ndrangheta. 6 months since Ryan Foster had been erased from their lives. In that time, the estate had transformed. It was no longer just a fortress of stone and security protocols. It was a home. On the low table near the fireplace, Leo's original drawing of a black brick fortress had been replaced by a new version. The same walls traced in gold crayon, every window lit from within. The hallways, once silent and imposing, now echoed with the sound of running footsteps and the occasional bark of the golden retriever puppy Nicholas had surprised them with last month. A bribe, he claimed, to stop Lily from asking for a pony. "You're going to let the heat out?" a deep voice murmured behind her. Vanessa didn't jump. The reflex of fear had finally, slowly, been rewired into a reflex of comfort. She leaned back, feeling the solid warmth of Nicholas's chest against her back. His arms came around her waist, resting easily, familiarly. "I'm watching the war," she said, nodding toward the window where a snowball fight had escalated into tactical warfare. "Leo has the high ground. He learned that from you." "He learned the aim from Marcus," Nicholas corrected, resting his chin on the top of her head. "And he learned the mercy from you. Look." Vanessa watched as Leo, having cornered Lily near the fountain, dropped his snowball instead of throwing it, allowing her to escape with a squeal of triumph. "They look like siblings," Vanessa whispered, the observation tightening her throat with a sweet ache. "They are," Nicholas said simply. "Blood or not, they are family, just like us." He turned her around in his arms. 6 months had changed him too. The sharp, predatory edge was still there. He would always be the Don, the man who commanded armies, but the constant grinding tension was gone. The shadows under his eyes had lifted. He smiled more. He cooked more. "Are you ready for tonight?" he asked, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Christmas Eve with 30 Italians?" Vanessa laughed. "I think I'm finally getting the hang of it. Zia Maria actually complimented my risotto last week. She said it was edible, which I'm told is high praise. It's the highest honor she can bestow." Nicholas grinned. "But I meant, are you ready for the library dedication?" Vanessa's smile softened. The library. It had been her project. Her way of carving out an identity that wasn't just the boss's girlfriend. With Nicholas's funding and connections, she had rehabilitated a derelict community center in the Bronx, turning it into a state-of-the-art literacy center for at-risk children. It was her way of fighting back against the darkness she had glimpsed, by lighting lamps for others. "I am," she said. "It feels right. To use all this," she gestured to the opulence around them, "for something that lasts." "You are building a legacy, Vanessa," Nicholas said seriously. "More than I ever did with shipping crates and contracts." The evening was a blur of gold light and laughter. The library dedication had been a success, attended by local politicians who were smart enough not to ask where the funding came from, and by families who just wanted a safe place for their children to learn. Vanessa had spoken, her voice clear and strong, no longer the whisper of a victim. Now, back at the estate, the real celebration began. The great hall of the manor was dominated by a 20-foot Christmas tree, a behemoth of fir that smelled of pine in winter. It was decorated with heirloom glass ornaments that had survived 3 generations of Giardoni history, interspersed with paper snowflakes Lily had cut out in school. The mixture of priceless antiques and kindergarten crafts was a perfect metaphor for their life. Dinner was a feast. 7 fishes, pasta, wine that flowed like water. Leo and Lily were vibrating with sugar and anticipation, their eyes darting to the pile of presents that had magically multiplied beneath the tree. "One present tonight," Nicholas announced, tapping his glass for attention. "The rest wait for Santa in the morning." "Please, Uncle Nick, just the big one," Leo begged, pointing to a suspiciously bicycle-shaped box. "Patience is a virtue, Leonardo," Nicholas said, though his eyes were twinkling. "Open the small blue ones." As the children tore into the wrapping paper, revealing matching leather-bound sketchbooks for Leo and a set of paints for Lily, Vanessa slipped away to the kitchen to check on the dessert. She leaned against the marble counter, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of joy wash over her. It was a stark contrast to last Christmas, which she had spent in the drafty Queen's apartment, counting pennies to buy Lily a doll from the discount store, terrified that Ryan would show up drunk at the door. Hiding? She opened her eyes. Nicholas was standing in the doorway. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He looked devastatingly handsome and completely at peace. "Just absorbing," she said. "It's a lot, in a good way." He walked over to her, but instead of taking her in his arms, he held out a piece of paper. It wasn't official stationery. It was a piece of construction paper, folded into a crude square. "I found this," Nicholas said, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't quite place. "It was tucked into the branches of the tree, near the top. Marcus had to get a ladder to retrieve it." Vanessa took the paper. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was stronger now, less wobbly than it had been 6 months ago, but unmistakably Lily's. "Dear Santa, thank you for the castle, and for the dog, and for making the bad man go away forever. You did a really good job. I don't need toys this year, but Leo really wants the bike, please. I just have one wish. Please make Nick stay. I know he is the boss of everything, but I want him to be my dad. Not a pretend dad, but a real one. And please make Mommy keep smiling." She looks like a princess now. Don't let her be sad again. Love, Lily. P.S. I left cookies near the fireplace. The dog might eat them, though. Vanessa read the letter twice. The first time, her vision blurred. The second time, a tear splashed onto the paper, right over the word Dad. She asked for me to stay, Nicholas said, his voice rough. As if I would ever go. She knows you're staying, Vanessa whispered, looking up at him. She just wants to make it official. Children crave permanence. So do I, Nicholas said. He took the letter from her hand and placed it gently on the counter. Then, he took both of her hands in his. Vanessa, he began, and for the first time since she had known him, Nicholas Giardoni looked nervous. The man who had negotiated treaties with warlords and faced down federal agents was trembling slightly. When I met you, he said, staring into her eyes with an intensity that burned, I thought I was saving you. I thought I was the White Knight, or the Dark Knight, riding in to rescue the damsel. I was arrogant. Nicholas, let me finish. He pressed on. I didn't save you, Vanessa. You saved me. You and Lily and Leo. You dragged me out of the cold. You turned this house into a home. You made me remember that I am a man, not just a title. You gave me something to lose, yes, but you also gave me everything worth living for. He reached into his pocket. He didn't drop to one knee. That was for movies, and Nicholas was too pragmatic for theatrics. Instead, he stood eye to eye with her, treating her as an equal, a partner. He opened a small velvet box. Inside sat a diamond that was breathtaking. Yes, but it wasn't ostentatious. It was an emerald cut, vintage, set in platinum. It looked timeless, solid, indestructible. I don't want to be your protector anymore, Nicholas said softly. I mean, I will be, always. But that is not enough. I want to be your partner. I want to be the one who wakes up next to you when we're 80. I want to be the father Lily is asking for. I want to build this legacy with you. Nicholas, Vanessa choked out, the happiness expanding in her chest until she thought her ribs might crack. Vanessa Turner, he said, holding her gaze. Will you marry me? Will you take this life, with all its complications and its shadows, and walk through it with me? Vanessa looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. She thought about the fear that had brought her here, the desperation of a pink backpack switched in a classroom. She thought about the way he had breathed with Lily during her panic attack. She thought about the way he respected her mind, her work, her boundaries. She didn't just love him, she trusted him. And in her world, trust was a rarer currency than love. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, I will. Nicholas let out a breath, a sound of profound relief, and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He pulled her to him, kissing her with a passion that was usually reserved for the privacy of their bedroom, deep and claiming and full of promises kept. You! They're kissing! The shout came from the doorway. Lily and Leo were standing there, looking scandalized and delighted. Nicholas broke the kiss, but didn't let go of Vanessa. He turned to the children, a wide, genuine grin on his face. Get in here, he ordered. They didn't need to be told twice. They ran into the kitchen, slamming into Nicholas and Vanessa in a tangle of limbs and laughter. Nicholas scooped Lily up in one arm and Leo in the other. He was getting too big for it. But he didn't complain, creating a group hug that felt like a fortress wall closing around them. Did you ask her? Lily demanded, eyeing the ring on Vanessa's hand. Did you? I did, Nicholas confirmed. She said yes. Yes! Lily pumped her fist in the air. I told Santa, I told him. Does this mean we're officially cousins? Leo asked, looking at Vanessa with hopeful eyes. It means we're officially a family, Leo, Vanessa said, reaching out to touch his cheek. No more pretend. No more temporary. Cool. Leo smiled, a bright, unshadowed expression that lit up his face. Can we open the bike now? Nicholas laughed, the sound reverberating through the kitchen. Go. Before I change my mind. As the children sprinted back to the great hall, Nicholas turned back to Vanessa. He wrapped his arms around her waist again, resting his forehead against hers. Happy Christmas, Future Mrs. Giardoni, he murmured. Happy Christmas, Nick, she replied. She hesitated for a second, then took his hand and placed it flat against her stomach. The fabric of her dress was smooth, her belly flat beneath his palm, but the secret she was carrying felt heavy and warm. Lily might be getting another wish granted next year, she whispered, her eyes locking with his. She asked for a brother, didn't she? Nicholas froze. His hand went rigid against her stomach. He looked at her, his eyes widening, the amber darkening with a sudden, overwhelming realization. Vanessa? He breathed. Are you... It's early. She smiled, tears leaking from her eyes again. But yes. We're going to need another stocking for the mantelpiece. Nicholas didn't speak. He couldn't. He simply buried his face in her neck, holding her as if she were made of glass and steel all at once. She felt his shoulders shake, just once, a silent release of joy that words couldn't capture. Later that night, the house finally fell quiet. The children were asleep, the bicycle assembled, the cookies eaten, mostly by Nicholas. Vanessa sat by the window in the bedroom, watching the snow continue to fall. The world outside was white and clean, the past buried under layers of new life. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, terrified, invisible, drowning. She had thought salvation would look like a police officer or a judge. She had thought safety meant hiding. She thought of Mark too, not with the crushing guilt that used to choke her, but with a softer ache she could finally carry without letting it own her. He had been her past. Nicholas, impossibly, was her future, and for the first time that didn't feel like a betrayal. She was wrong. Salvation had come in the form of a mistake, a switched backpack, a child's letter delivered to the wrong hands. It had come in the form of a man the world called a monster, who had looked at her broken pieces and seen a mosaic worth protecting. She looked at the ring on her finger, flashing in the moonlight. She looked at Nicholas, sleeping soundly in the bed. One arm reached out as if searching for her even in his dreams. Courage, she realized, wasn't about not being afraid. It was about accepting the hand extended to you, even when it came from the shadows.